first to call.
And all eyes are on Philly.
Stay tuned to WURD.
This is WURD Radio.
96.1 FM.
And 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app, and watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media. The views and opinions expressed by the guests, listeners, and hosts of any program on WURD Radio do not necessarily reflect those of ownership, management, or advertisers of this station.
All right, welcome everyone to the Thursday edition. It is the end of the Reality Check week. It is the end of the week edition of Reality Check here on the home of Black Talk Media, none other than WURD. Still continuing some special election coverage this week, hashtag Word on Politics. I'm Charles Ellison. I've been your anchor for hashtag Word on Politics. Also your host, executive producer, and creator of Reality Check here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app as well. How's everyone doing? Good morning, good morning. Good morning to everyone out there in Philly and beyond. So welcome to the program. I'm on Twitter.com, by the way, at Ellison Report. I don't do Facebook, but I do Twitter. Twitter.com, at Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check, hashtag Word on Politics. Keep a close eye continuing on that, particularly as we continue to watch election results unfold. As the Associated Press shows, currently in terms of the Electoral College vote, just a real quick bit of political housekeeping here, 264 Electoral College votes thus far for Joe Biden to Donald Trump's 214. All Joe Biden has to do is win a state, really. I mean, that state could be Nevada. That state could be Pennsylvania. We'll see. Could be Georgia. Could be Georgia. All he has to do is just win one state to finally go to get over that hump and to make it to 270. Because remember, you need 270 electoral college votes to win. So we here at WURD, here on Reality Check, we are sticking with Associated Press. As I've been saying since election night, AP is the gold standard when it comes to shot calling, when it comes to calling the states. AP is the gold standard. I would highly advise folks not to pay attention to any other news sources. If AP has not, as far as the Electoral College vote is concerned, if no other if AP has not called the state, it has not happened. So I mean that's just as and if AP has called the state, it has happened. So 264 Electoral College votes for Joe Biden, 214 for President Donald Trump. There are a variety of legal suits that are in the mix right now that the Trump campaign is pushing forward with. We'll obviously provide some analysis for that a little later on, definitely throughout next week. We'll probably go into this next week. But today I wanted to devote an entire Reality Check conversation to black men, the state of black men. Where do we go from here? We have been talking about black men for a few weeks leading up to the election. A lot of it was surrounding politics, but I brought some very smart brothers on with me throughout the next few hours. We're gonna start conversations hour by hour and talk about black men. Where do we go from here? National folks, also going to be talking to some local folks. Let's start the conversation off. We have with us one of our nationally renowned experts on the conversation around black men, Torrin Walker. He's based down in Atlanta, Georgia, of Context Media Group. He joins us by Skype. You can watch him on WURD TV. So Torrin has been joining us for about a few weeks now, every week. So it's good to have him on. How are you doing, Torrin? Good morning.
Doing well, Charles. How are you?
All right, excellent, excellent. And Martin Pratt of Philly, your Black News, definitely one of the experts on local Philly happenings and local Philly politics. Also joining us here, longtime digital strategist as well, joining us here on Reality Check, having this conversation about the state of Black men. Martin, good morning.
Morning. Glad to be here. Shout out to all WURD listeners joining always, like the most faithful audience on the East Coast is WURD listeners.
That's right. No, they are. They absolutely are. And that's a fact. We just dealing with, that's like facts right there. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Torrin, I'm going to start with you. Particularly when we look at the returns, the election returns, let's start off with the politics of this and your thoughts, your first impressions of how the Black male vote behaved, because we're going to have conversation about that. Overwhelming, once again in 2020, just like in 2016, overwhelming majority of Black male voters went for the Democrat, went for Joe Biden, as far as the exit polling data shows us. There was a slight uptick in the number of Black male voters who did end up supporting Donald Trump compared to 2016. But at the end of the day, 80% of Black male voters went for Biden. How does this change the contours of that conversation we were having about Black men leading up to the 2020 election?
Well, I think what it shows is Black men, along with Black women, really believe in progressive ideas, and they really are entrenched in the idea that the Democratic Party is the place that you can progress those ideas. I think what you're seeing with the slight uptick in Trump voters among Black men and Black women is there are some people who are dissatisfied with the direction that the establishment Democrats and the DNC has taken as far as their issues. But by and large, the majority of Black people are not going to vote Republican because they just see that as a place where their adversaries are going to vote. There's people in the Republican Party who are openly racist. There's people who are very clear about the fact that their priorities are for white Americans, and they'll bring in one or two people to kind of like brush that off to show that we got one or two Black people, we have one or two Latinos or gay people here, so we'll put them out as window dressing. But I think the majority of Black men are basically gonna they're gonna vote their interests, and right now their interests are with the Democratic Party. Whether that's true or not, there's a lot of conversation to be had about that, but by and large, they're not gonna deviate from that.
Yeah. And what was your, Torrin, real quick before I go to you, Martin, what's been your impression of the conversation after the sort of post-election or post-mortem analysis of the Black vote and that conversation on Black men? Because it was a really intense, heated conversation on social media, off social media. We talked about it somewhat, and that's why I felt like we need to do a state of Black men. We need to do a Black men gut check here on Reality Check. On election week. Like let's not wait on it. But what was your kind of initial impression of how people responded or reacted to? Did it feel like 2016, or do you feel like some of the conversation you and I've had, some of the things that I've written about the Black male vote to set the record straight, did that help some, so where it wasn't like a whole kind of blame black men fest like what we saw in 2016?
Well, one thing I want to make clear is, and I've been really adamant about this, a lot of the conversations that happen amongst Black people on social media, they're impactful, but they don't really affect the larger world. I think it's a good place for people who have grievances and people who have issues to get those ideas out. But to answer your question, I think what you saw in 2020 was a lot of redirection from the Democratic Party in the establishment off of like the issues that need to be addressed and the serious issues that the Democratic Party falls short in with Black people, and trying to bring it into this thing where Black women are going to save everybody and Black men are being recalcitrant and Black men are being hard-headed. And that's just really not the case. And the majority of Black men and Black women really don't feel that way. It's a small amount of people who have very big microphones who are pushing this narrative, and it's not really going to benefit Black people at all, and it's not going to benefit them really, but they think it is. And it's kind of like the opposite side of the coin that was happening on the Republican side, where they get one or two people who have grievances or have issues, or they have a book to sell, and this is how they do it. So to answer your question, no, I don't think it really affected it that much, except make the conversation a little bit more toxic.
Yeah, that's I actually hear you on that. Martin, I want to go to you too. So jump into this discussion, chime in on that, kind of what you're saying now out of that discussion, how that also influences or shapes the conversation, because we need to have a conversation about Black men. Black men have been the image of black men obviously have been distorted. Black men under attack. What I found very interesting too is during those few weeks leading up to the election, about like how Torrance said, these recalcitrant, hard-headed, knuckle-headed black men. And then, obviously we were seeing these conversations about people like Ice Cube, Lil Wayne, 50 Cent, or whatever. Not a whole lot of coverage of a lot of good things that brothers were doing, like that what was happening down in Fort Worth, Texas, right? Where like these Trump supporters were driving through their neighborhood like the Klan, and these brothers stood up. Like they were like, nah, you got to turn around. Like they kicked them out of their neighborhood. Like brothers actually protecting their communities. There was a lot, or brothers driving their grandmothers or their mothers to the polls. There was a lot of positive stories out there that just got mixed. But go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, I think that Torrent brought up a really good, and am I saying your name right? I don't want to mess your name up, brother. Torrent, right?
You got it right, yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I was looking at it like Torrance or Torrent. But Torrent brings up an excellent point that I had not considered, and which is that when you look at the right, I was seeing 2 weeks before, maybe even a month before, a lot of interesting conversation around the Lincoln Project and how the Lincoln Project was total BS and didn't move the needle at all. And what Torrent just said, it really resonated with me. I remember when what's the guy that Trump fired that was a hawk on and wanted to go to war over Syria. I can't think of his name right now, but the guy with the big bushy beard.
John Bolton.
Oh, John Bolton, right.
Bolton, came out against Trump and it's all this stuff. But every article I read said that, yeah, thanks, John Bolton, now. And so, to Torrance' point, it did not move the needle on the right side. In fact, Trump, in some cases, has done better than he did in 2016. So all the Lincoln Project, all the snipe, and all the snarkiness and all that was fun to watch. It was fun to laugh at, but it didn't help the Democrats' cause. And if anything, it may have empowered some of Trump's supporters to come out even more. So that's a really interesting dynamic for both parties, or in general for even people who are agnostic and non-party centric to consider when you're talking about civic engagement and political discourse. Is it appears that any kind of negativity either empowered each side, entrenched each side, or didn't do anything at all. And I think on the black side, one of the problems that we face a lot is that I was very upset that besides WURD Radio, besides WVON, WAOK down in Georgia, I can't think of Stevie Wonder's station out of California.
KGLA, right.
Yeah, like I didn't hear anything coming out of New York. I didn't hear anything coming out of Miami. I know there's a brother in Orlando who has a small station, Paul Porter. He was doing something talking about black men specifically, but black people in general doing positive things. Right. So the whole media complex, The Root, Griot, Blavity, all these loud voices, ERU Web, all these loud voices that get 1 million views and voice walk-ins, even Roland Martin, there weren't daily stories about local people who were doing the darn thing. I got those stories from local affiliates, like the brother in Detroit, drove his mom back to Chicago, 300 miles. You just Google black woman 300 miles. Her son drove her 300 miles to go back to vote, and because she couldn't get her ballot, and I think she's in her 80s. And she said, "We're going." He said, "Yes, Mom, we're going." And they drove in one day 600 miles to make sure his mom could place her vote. That story never bubbled up to the top. That wasn't a story that was on any major black media outlet that gets 1 million views.
Right.
So I think part of this problem that we have in the black community right now, at least, is that we are really taking the clickbait that was kind of established as the way for bloggers to get traffic in the early 2000s. We're still in that same mode of when we had sites like Gossip and those things that, here's a headline, or World Star, or
Right.
a media takeout. Here's this headline: Black people click on this, and it's like the headline that I think that the Black talk outlets, and I know AOK is not necessarily Black owned, but it's
Right.
eccentric. Reverend Sharpton is on there. That we have to do, I think, a better job at is, and I think WURD is definitely doing it with solutions journalism, is to talk about solution stories. As much as we talk about the devastating, can't believe, horrific murder, police brutality story, we have to also talk
put
about
that out there.
a positive story. And I think that to Torrance point also, that I like you including Black women in the conversation, because what happens to me, I met my wife, we talk about this all the time. I met her in a group on Facebook, and the name of the group was The Civil War Between Black Men and Black Women. And so, and there was a group that, and it was really popular early 2014. But that concept that there's a civil war happening between us is also something that I think has driven a wedge from in the media for Black men versus Black women.
That's some good points, Martin. Torrin, and what you were describing, Martin, as far as like that media industrial complex, right? That's like the Black media industrial complex. Torrin would call them the gatekeepers. You would call them the Negro whisperers, you know, some of Torrin's language. And he writes about that at Context Media Group, contextmediagroup.com. I mean, Torrin is brutal. You don't play when it comes to this conversation. That's why we like bringing them on every week. You wrote about this. Right? You wrote about this, Torrin, at Context Media Group recently, blaming Black men and American political tradition. And basically, social media, these digital tools, these digital drivers have now amplified that tradition, that long time, like hundreds of years, generational tradition of blaming Black men for everything. Expound on that, explain, because that's essentially what we're saying, you know, and that lack of, it's deliberate, it's by design, that lack of positive conversation or inspirational kinds of conversations around Black men. But expound on that, Torrin.
Okay. Basically that piece came about because there was a hashtag that I was part of helping to promote called Blame Black Men.
Right.
And that hashtag came about because Jamel Hill put out this tweet maybe like a week or so ago stating that she can't believe that so many Black men are in the bag for Trump. And because she has such an influence, because she has such a platform, a lot of people started piling onto that. And there was a lot of the language around that conversation got really hateful and really negative. So a couple of brothers and myself kind of put this hashtag together, and we just basically created all these outlandish, basically Chappelle Show sort of satirical things that Black people were before. And what it did was it got a lot of attention. It ended up being like the #1 trending topic on Twitter for like 2 days. But the purpose of doing that was to show how ridiculous it is and how puerile some of these conversations are when it comes to Black men, and the fact that there is a very real thing going on in academia, among Black academics, and among a lot of Black people who work in mainstream media, who instead of dealing with the serious issues that the Democratic Party has with its Black voter base, they're trying to use this old time honored tradition of just saying, we're going to bring in Black women. We're going to give Black women all this praise and say that, you know, they're saving the nation, they're saving their party and everything. But while we're doing that, we're also going to overlook any real issues that are really affecting the Black community. So that's what that was about. And I wrote the piece basically just calling these people out and telling them that they're basically, they're being tools and they're being opportunists because they're trying to advance their careers and they're trying to advance the brand, but they're not really doing anything to help the Black collective. And they're basically acting as gatekeepers. And I might have said something along the lines of like, you're no different than Stephen standing on the porch when Django rode up and everything. It's the same mentality. And, you know, some people got mad at that, and I included some examples of what I was saying. So that's what that situation, that's where that story came from. And I just said all that to say that we really have to get a lot more adult, and we have to be a lot more respectful about the way we speak to each other in front of people who are not Black. And we have to have some real conversation about some of these divisive issues. We can be part of the same collective, and we can have these conversations, but we have to come from a place of love, and we have to come from a place of respect. And once you get outside of that media bubble, a lot of Black people are having these conversations. They're passionate, but they're respectful. But it doesn't benefit anybody to have these conversations where Black men and Black women are seen as like attacking each other.
That's right. That's right. Stand by. Actually, we're going to go into a break. Folks, if you like listeners out there or viewers on Word TV, if you'd like to join in, jump into the conversation, if you have a question, want to add a little bit of perspective, some layer of feedback to this, 215-634-8065 locally. Toll free, it's 866-361-0900. You can join in on the discussion that we're having with Torrin Walker, Context Media Group, and also Martin Pratt of Philly Your Black News. We're having a conversation about black men. It is the state of black men, having sort of a state of black men micro summit here on Reality Check today for the next 3 hours. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Want to hear from the brothers as well. Sisters too. Sisters definitely chime in on this. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
What's up, everyone? I know you know the word, no, not the station, but this word, J-O-B that is, and our friends at Amoroso's Baking Company are hiring right now. Amoroso's has been baking the delicious bread in our community for over 100 years, and they want you to join their team today. The old and the young love Amoroso's, and they are hiring right now. Check it out. They offer fair pay and provide health, dental, and prescription plans after 90 days employment. Call 856-754-0355 or visit amorososbaking.com for details.
This Veterans Day vignette is brought to you by PICO.
African American women in the military during World War II. In recognition of Veterans Day, WURD Radio celebrates the African American women who served in the military during World War II. In May of 1942, the Women's Army Corps accepted its first 39 African American women, often referred to as Black Rosie the Riveters. Black women who served in the military during World War II played a key role in war production, overcoming Jim Crow, racial and gender discrimination. The African American women who served were revered by their families and were able to contribute to financial growth for their communities in ways that were unprecedented at that time. Their work often lives in the shadows, but many of the Black women who were in the military during World War II are our mothers, grandmothers, aunts who the United States could not have won World War II without. As we continue to fight for racial justice today, WURD Radio celebrates the African American women in the military during World War II and other Black Americans who have served and continue to serve this country.
This Veterans Day vignette was brought to you by PICO, powering communities.
Reality Check
With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. Reality Check, we're having a State of Black Men, hashtag State of Black Men session here on Reality Check today. Where do we go from here? Because there was a lot of conversation for it. A lot of people had lots of things to say about black men in the weeks leading up to the election. Okay. That's fine. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the state of black men. Where do we go from here? What do we need to do? How do we make black men better? You know, they were talking about build it better. What was that? What was the Joe Biden campaign slogan? Let's build back better or something to that effect.
Because there was so many slogans.
It was so many slogans, right?
Better together or something like that. I can't remember.
Right. So we trying to
cartoon president.
We
on
trying
time, and they said their slogan was "Vote Joe." That's all I remember.
Right. That's it. Right. Just go with Joe. Vote old Joe. Right. So
no malarkey.
I mean, we trying to make
right. No malarkey. That was
right. No malarkey. Yeah. So we trying to make brothers better. Right. That's what we're trying. We're focused on. I know we can't capture all the conversation in the next few hours, but we're going to try to capture as much of it as we can. Oh, go ahead, Martin.
I think also we're defining the black male narrative.
Right.
Because I think even we can't make, I don't know we can make brothers better, but we can definitely define the narrative that black men are not monolithic. We are not all Trump supporters and we're not all Biden supporters. So let's get it real and let's dig into, which is a side point I definitely want you to talk about this hour or unpack a little bit, is polling. And I think that we're going to have these barbershop conversations, these church after church conversations, or just, hang out on a chat line and get some real brothers to really talk about their emotions and feelings when it comes to being left out of conversations and discounted and the frustration that black men are feeling. I believe that we're feeling all across the board, but different reasons.
Right.
Besides the black billionaire conversations happening. Because that's all this is is everybody is 100 millionaire or above, or at least 40 or 50 million. We're not having no conversations with the brothers in the barbershop. I never see one of them on any of these channels talking about, oh, y'all want to support Trump. I don't see that. Mm-hmm. But I'm not saying they're not there. I'm not seeing them really covering that.
It's a good point, because, like, speaking of the barbershop, like, LeBron James, who I have an enormous amount of respect for, but he does that barbershop series on HBO, but it's with, LeBron and other millionaires, right?
Yeah, it's like millionaires, the rappers and other people he knows and everything. You know what I mean?
90 folk in the country. Like, that's not black men. 90 people is not black men.
Right. Exactly. We have some folks who are calling in, so I want to have them jump into the conversation, because I know they'll offer some smart slants to it. Let me go to Reverend Bonkale out of North Philly. Always good to hear from the Reverend, joining us for a reality check. # State of Black Men. Reverend, how are you doing, sir? Good morning.
I am doing good, Brother Charles. You and Brother Torrin and Brother Martin. I think you guys are sitting on my step right now. And I tried to call you yesterday. One of the things I wanted to say was, and it leads right into this, is while we're doing this analysis, while we're watching, the Trump people and their dirty tricks, we need to be starting to focus on the things that are going to move the needle forward for us. Now, having said that, there are a couple points I want to punctuate real quick. I know you probably got a lot of people on the line. Number one, in this conversation about the state of black men, we need to be, single out and recognizing that the white feminist movement should not be driving the narrative of who black men are and how black men and black women are and will interact. And a lot of the earlier conversations were being driven by them. Okay. And right now, the other thing is, especially in this political season, it's not about being a Democrat or Republican, and I think Turn said it a little earlier. It's about our own self-interest. And right now, we need to take advantage of the leverage that we have with the Democratic Party. Okay, because we do have leverage, and we need to initiate a honest conversation, which you guys are doing right now, about solidifying our collective commitment, collective being black men and black females, towards moving the needle forward towards our ultimate freedom. And that's where it should be focused, our ultimate freedom, and not 200 years from now, freedom in our lifetime. And then finally, as brothers, we need to take advantage of it. We need to reinforce our love for our sisters. We need to be saying it. We don't always argue with them, even though, sometimes we don't agree, but we need to be saying how much we love the sisters. Not just buying stuff, we need to do that too, but we need to go out of our way. Does that make sense?
No, yeah. Oh, no, either one of you, go ahead, respond to that.
Yeah,
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate that, and I think what the Reverend said, that made me think about the Voting Act. I'm sick and tired, personally. This is just me. Not the WURD Radio, not Torrent, not Charles Ellison. This is me, Martin Pratt, saying this only. This is my opinion. I'm sick and tired of young people coming to me talking about the Voting Act still is not still not ratified. They still have to go back every year and ask them for the right to vote. So Reverend is right. At this point, we should be saying to Democrats and Republicans, listen, we could have came out on your side, or we did come out on your side, but y'all have to bring back something home. One, at least the Voting Rights Act should be a law. We should not be going back to getting that reinitiated every 4 years or 2 years or whatever. That's BS. Right. So I think that our generation, I'm 50 years old, I think my generation's least thing that we could do is make sure the Voting Rights Act is actually a law.
Right. Go ahead, Torrin.
Yeah, I agree with what the Reverend said as well. I think you have to understand. I think something to be pay attention to as well is, I think there's a very important conversation that happened leading up to this vote about black people wanting tangibles for their vote. I think that needs to continue, and I think the pressure really needs to be on with that. And I think you go to any other group, when people want to run for office, whether it's local, state, or national, they go to every other ethnic group and they go to every other voting block and they bring them policy and they bring them tangibles. Now, whether they deliver on that or not is kind of like neither here nor there, but they approach them in a much different way than they approach black people. And I think that has to change. We have to get out of this idea that letting celebrities speak for us is going to carry everybody else. And I think we have to get people who really want our vote to go into the neighborhood, not just every 2 years, every 4 years, but talk to these people who they're dealing with, talk to these people who want their vote, and talk to them about their concerns and tell them exactly what you're going to do for these people, or try to do at least.
Yeah, let's go to one. Reverend Barclay, thanks so much. I always appreciate your insights. Thanks for listening and calling in as well. Let me go to Woody. Woody at the barbershop calling in for a reality check here today. We're talking about the state of black men. Woody, what's good?
Charles. I'm happy that you got these young men on here. I just want to know, are any baby boomers in the room in this conversation?
You know what? A little bit. Maybe no, there aren't. You know,
So
today,
point,
we're having like 3-part panel, but I just realized that no,
I understand that.
we tried to get as multi-generational as we could, but we couldn't. We didn't.
I understand, but there's going to have to be an extension to this because see, the real barbershops have, you know, and I open my doors for you right here at the barbershop. You want to bring your show here? That'll be great. And I'd like to have the conversation so we can say you can't know where you're going until you know where you came from. So our elders, a lot of them are in the 80s that come through here. And the knowledge that they have and the door that it opens in your mind is amazing because you might not see something that you think you know, particularly in the technological society we live in today. The kids don't feel like they have to sit at the foot of the elder anymore because they can push the button and get an answer. But see, that's just knowledge. And all you're getting, you should be getting understanding. And that's where you have to go to the elder to seek that. You see, so what I'm seeing here, and you talk about male and female, the black man has always serenaded his woman. You know, in Africa, there were women that ran the tribes. You know, they ran the society.
Right.
We never had disrespect until we got into the mindset of this type of society we live in here in America, where the male is this and the male is that and all this white supremacy thing. If you have an education from America, your ideology is white male supremacy in your educational ideology. That's just the way it is. And that, I think, ties into a lot of this. So this whole movement with women and then the brothers who have educational issues, as I shared with you many times, Charles, we have systemic educational discrimination in inner city schools all over the country. That makes you feel less than. In some cases, some of these brothers, one brother was on a program yesterday, and he talked to a young lady and said, he went into the polls. He said, I'm so sorry, I don't want to bother you. He said, but I can't read.
Wow,
he said, I want to vote against Trump. Please help me. So after he left, the lady cried about it. And I said, wow, that was so deep. But here's things we don't talk about. We got to dig in, especially you younger, educated brothers, to sit and help understand there's many, many people with a whole bunch of wisdom, but they don't have the educational knowledge. So when we come together in the barbershop, man, I say wisdom and knowledge create the explosion of understanding. So I look forward to talking to you guys, and hopefully maybe you'll give that some thought and think about it, because the level of age plays a big role when you talk about male experiences in America.
It does. Yeah. And so I appreciate you too, Woody. As I'm thinking about it, I don't think we added that baby boomer element. So next time, because I think we're going to do part 2, part 3, multiple parts of this conversation. Go ahead. Who was about to speak? Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that that's one thing I appreciate about WURD Radio, and that's one thing at Philly Your Black News. Our original goal before the COVID was to do a magazine focused specifically on black folks in Philly over 50. And so I think that the WURD audience is definitely there. I know in my case, I have black men that are pouring into me and talking to me every day who are baby boomers, and who definitely, because I'm going to be 50 next year, and I feel like that's who I'm kind of getting my direction from. Because I was a teacher and a program director in Atlanta, I dealt with a lot of 20-something millennials in 2016, and now here in Philly, I'm definitely more exposed to. I'm working with high school students over at Wharton, and those are Generation Z, and so I really feel like we do get that some. But I thought that the Reverend that's coming on at 12 he's not a baby boomer.
Who's that?
the brother that's coming on from the From Power. Or we used to
I don't. I think for no, you know what he might. I don't want to say that. I don't want to put his age on. Right. Maybe what's the generation that's like in between Gen X and Baby Boomer?
I thought that was it.
Maybe that is Baby Boomer. So we probably have that covered. Yeah, we probably have that covered. Yeah.
But it's a really good point, and I definitely want to make sure that seniors or people over 50 are part of the conversation. I think definitely part two, and I think that our audience is WURD Radio has a great audience of brothers and sisters.
Hey, Torrin, talk a little bit about what Woody was saying too, because I mean, there's just so many issues to unpack there, right? And it's like knowing, one, it's endeavoring to have this conversation, have it in responsible and productive ways, but then how do we have the discussion, right? Or how do we articulate it? How do brothers also articulate and advocate for themselves? Like, remember, he was just describing this situation. And Philly has a real crisis on its hands with the adult illiteracy rate. So we already got low labor force participation among black men, especially young black men in the city of Philadelphia, but that's just the case everywhere, right? And that's for a variety of systemic reasons. But then we have this illiteracy. Over a quarter of Philadelphia adults, a city that's basically half black, are functionally illiterate. And the majority of those functionally illiterate are black people, and many of them black men. So yeah, talk about that, address it.
Well, I didn't even know that was the statistic about Philly, man. And first of all, that's criminal. Second of all, what he was talking about, intergenerational conversation, I think that is very important, because I really think there are a lot of black men of many generations, no matter where they fall on the spectrum, who feel like they're living in a bubble and nobody really listens to them and nobody really has any kind of concern for what their emotional state is or what their well-being is. I hear that a lot. And just because I'm fairly visible on social media, I get a lot of brothers reaching out to me telling me that they feel like they're alone and they feel like nobody really cares about what they're dealing with, or they feel like because they're absorbing all this stuff and this negativity that America puts on them, and that like America encourages some black people in higher positions to put on them, they feel like they have nowhere to really give that as an outlet. So if you have generations of black men who are going through life feeling like nobody cares about them and nobody listens to anything they have to say, it's going to be very hard to try to reach them with something like voting. If people who are around, the people who they never see are kind of condescending to them and not really talking to them one-on-one like human beings. And I think that has to be addressed. And we have to create platforms like what you're doing with WURD and what a lot of other brothers are doing, like in other cities, to try to get this conversation out. But I think what that's going to really take, we're going to have to get people, even like you said, I think it's an amazing thing like what LeBron is doing with the barbershop idea. But it would be great, man, if you got people who went to work every day and went to 9 to 5s, and if you got people who are older and brought them into platforms like that so the rest of the world and brothers in general could see that stuff and see people who look like them, who are on the same economic level like they are, and who are dealing with some of the same stuff, would have those conversations so they can see that they're not alone, and that would really help create a dialogue. Right now it's really too fragmented.
I agree with you. You give me some ideas on that too. I think we're going to have a discussion offline behind the scenes about that. Let me go to Joel out of Overbrook Park. A lot of people are actually responding. This is good. People are responding to this conversation. We have folks calling in. We have folks on Facebook Live making some really good comments about this. I just had the Congressional Black Caucus folks, a senior staffer there, just DM me. And they're like, hey, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, remember she's got this bill about black men. She has to be a part of this discussion at some point later on. So they're listening in. Folks are listening to this. I found that very curious. They like responding and reacting and listening right away. So that's a good thing. You found that
curious, Charles? You found people are curious about black men?
In a good way. So let me go to Joel out of Overbrook Park. Who's calling in for a reality check. Wait a second, Joel, hold on. Let me take a break. Thanks for that, Troy. Let me take a quick break, then we'll bring back Joel in Overbrook Park and others, 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900. We're having a State of Black Men micro summit here on Reality Check WURD. We got Torrin Walker, Context Media Group, and Martin Pratt of Philly Your Black News, both joining us for this first hour. We got the whole 3 hours of Reality Check devoted to a conversation on black men. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Keystone First VIP Choice HMO SNP Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan has a 4 out of 5 star rating and is one of the highest rated Medicare plans in the region. Keystone First VIP Choice and you are better together. If you live in Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, or Delaware County, and you have both Medicare and Medicaid, choose the Medicare plan that is working to help you get better care. Enjoy extra benefits at no cost to you with Keystone First VIP Choice. You get benefits like dental, vision, and transportation to and from your medical appointments. They also cover a fitness membership to a gym of your choice. $150 toward over-the-counter pharmacy items. There's no copay for doctor's visits. They offer a large provider network, a great prescription plan, dental coverage, and even eyeglasses. Plus, you don't have to wait for open enrollment. You can change your coverage every quarter. Keystone First VIP Choice. The name you trust, the service you deserve. Call Keystone First VIP Choice today at 1-877-686-1760 or visit KeystoneFirstVIPChoice.com. Now, a WURD Radio election update. Here's WURD's election coverage reporter in partnership with VoteBeat, Sojourner Ahebe.
I'm Sojourner Ahebe with today's election coverage report.
West Philadelphia resident Ilya Knizhnik has volunteered as a poll worker for almost 20 years.
People use the expression, this is the most important election, a little too much, but this really is. Coming from somebody that's volunteered in almost every election, this is kind of the defining election of at least my life.
Knizhnik worked the polls all day Tuesday in West Philadelphia's Belmont neighborhood at Allen Locke Elementary School. He says running an election during a pandemic has had voters confused about how to cast their ballots.
These satellite offices opened at 11:30. The voting sites opened at 8 a.m. But they told people, it's like, oh, if you requested a mail-in ballot, go to the satellite office, which was closed.
Despite the option to cast a vote via mail-in and avoid the lines and the potential to be exposed to the virus, many black voters expressed a desire to come in person. Thomas Friend of Cobbs Creek is from the same neighborhood Walter Wallace Jr. was fatally shot by Philadelphia police officers on October 26, just days before the presidential election. Friend says Wallace's death struck a chord from within and motivated him to vote in person because he felt it would have more of an immediate impact on Election Day.
It can make a big impact on a lot of things that's taking place within the country and within our neighborhoods.
Poll workers across the city kept lines moving efficiently and quelled confusion and tensions as they arose. Chris has lived in Overbrook for 17 years. When a machine went down at her polling location early Tuesday, she knew she had to keep calm.
Communicate with them, trying to keep their spirit light. Yeah. I meditate, so it was easy not to get caught up in the rah-rah, because some people, the tensions were high.
Andre Black has been a resident of West Philadelphia's Black Bottom since the 1960s. He's one of the many African-American seniors who came out on Election Day to work the polls.
I'm 70, so my thing is, I'm going to go about doing the right thing because I believe in these people.
He's referring to a t-shirt he wore on Tuesday that's decorated with African-American abolitionists and civil rights activists like Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, and Fannie Lou Hamer. He told me there was one machine that wasn't working when polls opened at 7 a.m., and it didn't 2 hours later. Ultimately, poll workers like Black were the backbone of Election Day. For Knizhnik, this election has a lot at stake.
There is no humanity in this White House. There is no art in this White House. There is nothing that in this White House that unites the nation.
But there's also hope.
I think the unprecedented situation that we're in really gets more people out and energized and willing to brave all the difficulties and come out.
In Philadelphia, Sojourner Ahebe, WURD Radio.
This was a WURD Radio election update presented in partnership with VoteBeat. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
Reality check
With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. It's our State of Black Men discussion. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Joel out of Overbrook Park. You were waiting patiently for a reality check. Joel, how are you doing? Good morning to you.
Oh, good morning. I'm doing well. I just want to say I appreciate this conversation. It is very, very much needed. So I actually serve as the president for the Philadelphia chapter of 100 Black Men, which is primarily a mentoring program for young men. So here in Philly, we deal with young men as young as first grade, and we go up through high school and into college. And so some of the things that I just want to share, I want to add to this conversation is I've been doing mentoring straight for about 10 years now, and then it actually goes back about 20 years, but it was off and on in those points. And some of the stuff that I've seen in the community and from some of my research is I've come across research on something called identity foreclosure. And identity foreclosure is said to be impacting Black men in urban environments up to 80% of the population. So that 80% of our young men either want to be athletes, they want to be rappers, or they want to be in the criminal enterprise, that whole piece there. So we are losing like 80% of the minds of our young folks. And so when you have folks like 50 Cent and now P. Diddy who, you know, in a sense is like worshiping money, and these young men don't have something to attach to, then yeah, I'm not shocked that a percentage of them are so distraught with life that they would go for a Trump. And I contrast that with 40 years ago here in Philadelphia, we had a program called AFT, which took young people and got you educated so that you could go on to college, or we had other programs if you wanted to go into trade. There was more things that got young Black men to become a part of Philadelphia. So in 2020, it's far less. And so we are having more problems. So I just wanted to share that, add to the conversation, and I'll drop off and listen. Thank you.
So, hey, Joel, too, definitely reach out to me. I'd like to learn more about what Philly 100 Black Men is doing. C. Ellison at WURDradio.com. I know you just jumped off, Joel, but C. Ellison at WURDradio.com. So email me, and let's continue that discussion. Let's see if we can be a little bit more intentional and translate this conversation and what your reflections just now by phone, and then see if we can kind of find some synergy and move that into some sort of action as well. We also have Marley K on Twitter. Thank you. She's saying really enjoying the discussion at Marley K20. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Real quick, I want to go over some of these comments and questions on Facebook Live. Junior Lee, always appreciate Junior Lee. How do positive Black men take over blocks and become more admired than entertainers? So that kind of leads a little bit back to that discussion or that question that Joel just raised from Philly 100 Black Men. Also, Haley Stephen Alston also listening in. Thanks, Charles, for this program today. No disrespect to the women of WURD. I give them mad respect, support a lot of their views, but we need this type of discussion. Black women are the backbone of our race, but the narrative seems to be nowadays, you don't need a Black man to make it. White supremacy knows about dividing the Black man from his woman. You control the people, a la Nouveau Willie Lynch philosophy. Junior Lee chimes back in. What if there was an online and in-person platform created to allow Black men from all positive sectors of the economy and society to offer webinars for young Black men between the ages of 13 to 25 to educate them on their respective fields of expertise and offer a clear path to employment and or entrepreneurship upon completion? Shelley Wyndham also chiming in and saying we have to sit down with our elders. So go ahead, Torin. Offer some thoughts on how do positive Black men take over blocks? How do they become more admired than the entertainers?
Well, I want to preface that by saying that I think we first have to kind of like reevaluate what we think of as positive, because sometimes things that look positive to us may not be positive. Yeah. We have to get out of this idea that a positive Black man is the brother in the suit, because we got people who wear suits all day who are selling us down the river. Some brothers, you got brothers. All right. We got brothers who are on the block every day. They might have been in some sort of suspect activity, but they've managed to do some things that they've either gotten away from that, and they're talking to people trying to direct brothers away from that situation. Or you have people who are coming back home from doing like bids and that sort of stuff, who've seen what that life is like, and they can sit and talk to some of these brothers too. We got to get out, and even some entertainers. There are some entertainers who really are trying to put in work, but they're either disconnected and they don't know how, or they don't really know who to talk to and they don't know who to trust. But I mean, we have to have brothers who are willing to come back into the communities and talk to these people and really have concern about these people because they see the larger collective as being important and not just because of what they can get. And I think that's what the problem is right now. I don't have a problem with entertainers. If you look back at the history of entertainers and civil rights, we've always had black people who were in entertainment or in athletes who were stood up for civil rights, whether it was Paul Robeson, whether it was Josephine Baker, whether it was the old Jim Brown, not the new Jim Brown, but the old Jim Brown, Jesse Owens, even all the way down to Kaepernick. You know what I mean? There've always been people who've been influential, who've been able to talk, but we got to bring in brothers who aren't famous and brothers who have had life experiences that may not be like everybody else's, and have them talk to these brothers because that's what they're going to listen to.
Yeah, also, Martin, what are those kind of, is there a way to package this conversation, package the advocacy and the action around it into like a priority list? Like, what are those priority issues? Because the next part of this discussion in the next hour, we're supposed to have a state and local legislator. We're going to have, I'm scheduled to have on Pennsylvania State Representative Chris Rabb. He's supposed to join us. He's talked about this quite a bit. I am scheduled also to have Philadelphia City Council member Isaiah Thomas. He just tweeted that he's going to join us for this discussion a little bit later on, so I know he's coming. But is there a way to kind of package this where we, in a really sort of very salient, very clear, punchy way, these are the top priorities for black men?
Well, I think that this conversation is allowing us to have an audio and a video visualization of this. But so to your question right now, we should clip your question, take it as a video snippet, and then use that as a survey. I know I have 22,000 followers on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn just started a survey scenario. And also over on LinkedIn, there's Black LinkedIn now. Right, and so Black LinkedIn is trending like Black Twitter is. New York Times actually wrote a story on Black LinkedIn. So I think on LinkedIn, on Instagram, we need to do surveys and gather some data before we say these are the 5 or 6 areas, and create the, between the three of us, we have very good, at least I believe the three of us have really good engaged audiences. So we should be able to draw some data out, and let's see where I definitely have access to some baby boomers in Philadelphia, but across the country, in Texas, I have some baby boomers, so I can make sure that that's one of the issues, make sure that we have the elders' voices in this, and then put out a statement about the data that we got, and then do let's draw together a summit. I know there's a new social network that's going to launch. It's supposed to be Friday, but actually it probably won't be ready for public consumption until next week. It's Black-owned. It's called 360 Wise. It actually is going to bring together, similar to Facebook, you'll be able to post on this social network across all networks from this network, but also it's a lot of video networking that is included in this new social network. So there's an ability for us to have a Black-centered platform that allows us to have this conversation on a Black social network that we then share to other social networks.
Let me bring in Lola out of Jenkintown, who's joining us for a reality check here. Lola, how are you doing?
Yes, Charles, how are you? Thank you, gentlemen, for having this conversation, because it is very much needed. And I just wanted to come from maybe like a woman's perspective, and wanting to maybe you guys speak about that. Growing up, my father was in a house, and I had that strong male figure. But then I saw around me a lot of people who didn't. And then as you grow up, you start to see that. And also I want to preface that I have 2 sons, and my husband, of course, is in their lives. And so when you see young Black men who don't have any interaction with other Black men who are mentored, you see the difference between the two. And you see how they grow up, and you see how lost they are. And I just wanted to you guys to speak to that, because I don't see a whole lot of men, and not coming down on Black men. Maybe they don't just have the direction of really giving back to young Black men. And I'm not saying you have to be rich. You can be the electrician. They don't understand that you don't have to be a ball player to make $80,000 or $90,000. There are a lot of men out here making good money, sanitation workers. and the young black men are not getting any direction from anybody. I mean, one of my friend's son, one of my friends, my son's friend, he told my husband he never had a conversation with a older black man before. His mother had 5 kids, and he, didn't know who his father was. And he was almost going into the wrong direction. He was almost going into the streets to start selling drugs because they didn't have enough money. So
hey, I'm sorry. Hate to cut you off too, Lola, and thanks for that insight. I just want to make sure I get one more caller in here. Thank you for that too, and I want to have you two react. Derek out of North Philly, calling in for Reality Check. Sorry, Derek, if you can keep it as quick as you can. How are you doing? Good morning.
Maintain love, peace, blessings, and prosperity, Charles.
Peace back at you. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Charles, for my reality check. And I appreciate your distinguished guest for bringing the conversation to the table. I like to say, Charles, that the barbershop talks are essential and necessary right now. And I say that based on whatever level that is on a high disposition with money or at a lower station. It's just that we need to have these conversations in our circles. And then from that, Charles, I think the conversation, as was brought up, needs to be shift so much from money. I have a saying that goes, wisdom over money, dollars changing currency, because I believe that money doesn't necessarily bring you wisdom, but wisdom can allow you to acquire money. But the most of all, what I want to say is that the conversation should change from money to love. And that is that when we greet each other, no matter what circle or what station or what neighborhood that we're in, we need to understand that we've been through a tough time. And instead of, I hate you, it's like, I love you, man. I don't know you. How you doing, man? Or we just need to go back to the time whereas we had love, and this is how we were making it until we were able to acquire through affirmative actions and programs to get education and sit in these high places. So we need to get back to just loving the community for everyone.
Yeah, the basics of love, right? The basics of community. We definitely need that. Derek, words of wisdom from Derek this morning here on our State of Black Men conversation. Real quick before we go to break, I'm wondering what your brother's time is like, because I know everyone's busy, especially with both Martin and Torrin, because you all are doing the work. Are you able to stick around with us for like the second part of this discussion? We're going to have Councilmember Isaiah Thomas and also State Rep. That's who we're scheduled to have, State Rep Chris Rabb. They're going to be joining us. We're going to have more of a policy conversation now. Now we're moving into the policy conversation about what can we do. How do you look, Torrin? You good?
What time? It's 11 o'clock here, right? You're on the same time, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm good for like another half hour or so.
Okay, excellent. And Martin Pratt, I think we got you too. Okay, great. And then we're going to be, I think, Chris Rabb is supposed to be joining us, or Representative Rabb is supposed to be joining us by Skype, Councilman Thomas by phone. Let's take a break. When we come back, more State of Black Men Micro Summit here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Enterprise Exterminators, located 4943 Wayne Avenue, specializing in lantern flies, termites, bed bugs, fleas, mice, and roaches. Do-it-yourself kits are available. Call now, 215-849-7070.
Jobs,
Entrepreneurship opportunities, small business resources,
and financial literacy.
livelihood. The new initiative from WURD Radio to connect Philadelphians to resources to help take the next steps in their professional lives. WordWorks.com features career readiness tools, entrepreneurship resources, funding opportunities, and events to expand your livelihood. Visit WURDworks.com right now and take the next step in your professional journey. Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network.
Family Therapy Vignette Moments with Dr. Lucille Ijoy. Come on out and become a WURD Radio member one by one. Renew your membership or get a new one. Get serious information and have some fun. Call 215-425-7875. That's 215-425-7875. Come on out and become a WURD Radio member one by one. Renew your membership or get a new one. Get serious information and have some fun.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Independent Black Media.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison.
Right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
Okay, all right. Welcome back to our State of Black Men discussion. I think we're trying to get Pennsylvania State Representative Chris Rabb, but we right now have Philadelphia Councilman Isaiah Thomas, I believe. I think he's joined us by phone. Councilman, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. All right. No, that's excellent. And I think a little bit later on we might have State Representative Chris Rabb just just working out the technical issues on that. Thanks for joining us. Good morning to you. Really appreciate this. So we're in phase 2 of this discussion. We're having it the entire 3 hours of Reality Check, so really appreciate your time this morning. And want to get more into the policy angular aspect of it. I still have Torrin Walker of Context Media Group and Martin Pratt of Philly Your Black News on from the first panel, just having such a good, productive discussion. Felt like I wanted to kind of still keep them on for the policy part. Talk about that from the perspective of a legislator, local level, how you're viewing, Councilman, what the state of black men is now, and what that package of policy solutions could be. Let's kind of start top line with that conversation.
So good morning, and again, and thank you to the listener audience for having me. Good morning to the other panelists. That is a very loaded question, and I could probably give like a 15-minute monologue answering that, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. The state of black men in Philadelphia is bad. I don't need to go into the different issues that they're facing. I'm pretty sure there are so many I'll probably miss one. From the legislative perspective, though, I think the goal right now is to attack the most immediate and to simultaneously put together plans to address those issues that are systematic. So when I say most immediate, what am I talking about? Well, right now, black people are suffering more than any other demographic due to the coronavirus crisis, and that's just not the physical impact, it's the financial impact and also the mental health side of it as well, too. So the number one priority for me as it relates to young black men and black folks in general is to continue to fight this pandemic and then to assure when we come back on the other side that not only did we not displace people from our city, but those people who were struggling before the pandemic and, again, that being heightened during the pandemic, that they're getting support, they're getting relief, and they're getting the resources that they need to have the same quality of life as their non-black counterparts. Now, when you're talking about systematic stuff, look, these are institutions and problems that we all know exist that has suppressed our community for some time that we're going to fight. And so what we're talking about from a legislative perspective is how our schools, climate, culture, curriculum, and governance. We're also talking about how our communities are policed. We're looking at this huge issue of poverty, which is a big problem. And we're also thinking about this issue of redlining and how people are being displaced from their neighborhoods and from their communities and not being able to reside in certain sections of the city. So I know that was a loaded answer, but you gave me a loaded question.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. We like loaded answers here at Reality Check, Councilman. No, I appreciate that. Okay. So, and real quick, we did manage to get Pennsylvania State Representative Chris Rabb. I want to make sure I cover this kind of state local. But both of you, Councilman Thomas and Representative Rabb, respect you both because you bring some really wonderful and many times just very smart, complex insights to this issue. So I thought, what better folks to have if we're going to have a policy discussion than you two. Representative Rabb, if you can hear us, I know you're joining us by phone now. How do we, I was asking these two brothers I've got on with me still, Torrin Walker and Martin Pratt from our first panel earlier on, how do we package that, how do we package the policy priorities for black men? What does that policy prioritization framework look like for you as it relates specifically to black men?
Well, that's a great question. So in order to put together a policy package, we first have to look at the structures and processes that influence those policies, whatever they are. We have to know math, right? So we understand electoral math. We say, okay, this is what it's going to take to get to 270 electoral votes, right? That's what the nation's gripped to see what's going to happen over the next few hours and days. But after and in between election cycles, we need to know the arithmetic for power and change. And so what that looks like in city council is very different than what it looks like in the state legislature. In city council, it's majority of color and Democrat. In Harrisburg, unfortunately, it's quite the opposite. And it's going to remain that way even after the final tally. For this election cycle, it looks like Democrats will remain in the minority in the House and the Senate with 2 years left for our Democratic governor and under the auspices of ostensibly a Democratic administration. So that's going to be a divided government, and it's going to get really ugly over the next 2 years. So how the state helps the city is going to be very precarious. We have to do it, and part of that involves advocacy. So you can't have meaningful policy without advocacy. If the structure, the messaging, the substance of the policy is not put forth in a way that speaks in a powerful narrative to our most vulnerable communities, the policy is going to be dead on arrival, right? It's what you wrap it in, what is the framing. So we have to talk about those priorities, and so everything the councilman was talking about is on point. I am concerned about helping folks like him in city council to do their job better and figure out what is the nature of our relationship when we collaborate, which we have through the police reform work group very successfully in terms of addressing police violence and terror, and improving transparency and accountability and training. That has to continue. But it's going to be really hard because a lot of these things that impact Philly disproportionately are done through our state legislature. And as a result, we're going to have some real strategy sessions. And part of that is explaining not just strategy sessions among elected officials on the local and state level, but in our communities to talk about what is this new dynamic. Just having a Democrat in the White House is not nearly enough because so much happens on the local and state levels, and we have to figure out what that is. So part of this, frankly, before we can talk about policy, is civic literacy. Who is responsible for what? You know, there are people who still, even in my own family, who think I'm in Congress, and they don't understand anything about the state legislature. And they don't understand how the state legislature impacts Philly and how Philly impacts the state legislature. So a lot of this is collaboration and education, which is part of any meaningful organizing and mobilizing that we do. So let's start there. Let's do a debrief of what happened in this election cycle and its impact in the coming days, weeks, and months. And then when we have that level of literacy and engagement, we can say, all right, what do we got to do?
And, you know, that's a good point on that advocacy and engagement piece, Representative. I want to bring Torrin in here, Torrin Walker, Context Media Group, in case, one, Torrin, you have a question, or two, you have sort of a comment, like, how do we, a part of that, too, entails that, and we've talked about this many times before, Torrin Martin, how do you connect the grass tops and that grass tops action, those priorities, a lot of the maneuvering that's taking place on that grass tops level, which is what Councilman Thomas, Representative Rabb, they represent the grass tops influencer level. How do you connect that and then activate collaborative action between the grass tops and the grassroots? How do you think that, how we think we go about that? You know, particularly looking at it from a messaging and communications strategist kind of perspective.
I think you have to look at it as the Congressman said about education. The education has to be from top down and from bottom up. You have to have people in positions of power who are still connected to the people on the ground, who are really doing the community work in neighborhoods, who are trying to improve neighborhoods, who have initiatives, and they have to be accessible to those people. And the people who are on the ground have to be willing to go into some of those positions of power, into those corridors of power, and talk to the people who are receptive to them. I think that's the only way things really work. It can't be just a lateral one way anymore. It has to be people listening to each other for the benefit of the community, and I think that's what has to happen.
Yeah. I don't know, Martin, if you had any questions there. You know, kind of as you're listening to that conversation with the councilman and the representative are describing, like how that connection, because I think that's a big problem, but I think it's a big endeavor. It's something we need to address.
Right. I think I had the pleasure of meeting Brother Rabb at an event that he was supporting, Sustained PHL Awards, and I know that he mentioned there are some opportunities there on the state budget level for the state legislators to support community activities. So in that case, my question or comment would be also to our city council person, Councilman Thomas. I know in New York there were some discretionary funds that New York City Council people could allow community events and community activities that are nonpartisan to come about. I think that this conversation, even though we're talking about having it virtually and digitally, I think that would be something that I would love to see state legislators and city council person come together on, is, you know, some small budget that allows us to facilitate a real call out for, like, maybe even the goal is 10,000 Philadelphians, black men, to have this conversation, or even more than 10,000. But I think we can definitely bring about 10K to the market, and that can be a unique involvement that happens once a year around, and it doesn't have to be strictly on virtual. We can definitely have like a Mark Lamont Hill's bookstore. Now that we're kind of reopened, we can have different people at different places. Someone like a Philip Roundtree probably would be interested in being part of the conversation.
Let me let the councilman. Yeah, go ahead, councilman.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you loud and clear.
I think a lot of things were said between the last time I spoke. Real quick, Rep. Rab and other folks talked about the education side. I just want to briefly say that I 100% agree. We need to teach civics and government in high school with the option to get registered to vote. When we talk about long-term plans, that's something that we are trying to push. And the truth is this. Look, you could be an honor roll student coming out of the school district of Philadelphia, and you've only been taught world history, American history, but never local civics and government. So we've seen in this presidential election that we are continuing to produce intelligent people who just have never been exposed to how government works, so they are misinformed when it comes time to vote, especially in an election like this where we see the participation numbers are pretty high. I do agree as it relates to allocating dollars and resources. I would love to be a part of a dialogue or a conference surrounding black men. But look, the elephant in the room is this. I've been in council for 10 months, and over the last 10 months, people have a totally different perception of me than what they did before I got here. And so I would love to do that, but there are certain questions that people have, and rightfully so, surrounding elected officials. And that's natural because we represent institutions that have traditionally suppressed black men. So when you look at a lot of the things that are happening right now and combine that with the lack of education, a lot of our young people see government as this cloud and this fog that's against them. So I'm 100% down to work with brothers to be able to convene and talk about what we need to do for our municipality. And as it relates to the ideas around allocating resources, I don't want to comment too much on that because that's an initiative that's taking place right now, and I don't want to spoil that.
No, that's okay. No, I appreciate you saying that too. And you raise a real good point, Councilman, and Representative step in on or chime in on this one, where it's like, how do you operate or navigate as a black man within these kinds of institutions that have been built, have been designed to attack, to spread animus, hostility towards black men? How do you operate within an environment like that? I think Councilman Thomas raised a very good point. And also trust in it, trust in the process that it presents. Maybe it's not really about trust, it's about manipulation. Representative?
Well, I think when we talk about civic literacy, we have to understand how policies for generations have been set up to purposely and specifically disadvantage black men. Now, this is not to the exclusion of black women. There are parallel and equally problematic things that hurt black women. But when we talk about black men could vote in this country after 1780 if they were a free person of color. But in 1838, our state legislature amended our state constitution to ban black men from voting. 1838. We regained it in 1870 through the ratification of the 15th Amendment, and then a year later, Octavius Catto was murdered by a white supremacist on election night because of black political empowerment, right? It was a vigilante that led to his ultimate assassination, right? And then we had the poll tax up until 1933 in this state. So, and then if we look at other institutions, we look at the third largest expenditure in the state budget, which is locking up poor black men. We got 46,000 souls in our state prison system, overwhelmingly black, overwhelmingly from the Philly area and urban areas across the state, right? That's billions of dollars we're talking about. We have a state budget of normally $38 billion, and that's the third largest expenditure. And the top three expenditures represent 90% of all state tax dollars. So black men and boys need to understand these dynamics, and that's not going to be taught in the Philadelphia School District anytime soon. And it's not just youth I'm talking about and students. I'm talking about civic literacy for everyone. And this is something that I regularly do as a state representative when I had community events. I try to do it on social media and other ways. But these are conversations that we must have between election cycles so that we can build up a level of co-governance such that the most engaged in our community can hold elected officials accountable and can also provide the blocking and tackling when we move forward on legislation that the community is strongly behind and has influenced before it hits the House floor or the Senate floor. And so this is a relationship that must be cultivated.
Yeah,
Hey,
Representative, hold that thought. Real quick? Hold that thought, Councilman, actually, because we got to go into a break. I'm with Tor, and I'm going to let you go. Great to have you here, and I know we gave you some food for thought as well, and really appreciate you as always. Torin Walker of Context Media Group. Go to contextmediagroup.com for more information and some great insights. At Torin Walker on social media, where he's highly engaged on Twitter, at Torin Walker. He's been joining us here. He joins us here every week on Reality Check, so he's here for our State of Black Men Micro Summit on Reality Check. Torin, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Let me give you a
nice to meet you, Torin. You as well, brother. Let's connect. Let's get each other's info about that.
All right. Thank you, brother. All right. Take care. Councilman, hold that thought. Martin Pratt still staying with us. We got Martin Pratt of Philly Your Black News. We also have Council Member, Philadelphia City Council Member Isaiah Thomas. He's about to chime in after this break, and State Representative Chris Rabb. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Did you know you can catch the flu and COVID-19 at the same time, or even back-to-back? Don't risk catching the flu during the COVID-19 pandemic. The flu shot is a safe and effective way of reducing your chances of catching the flu or spreading it to others. And the flu shot helps protect you and your community from the worst effects of the flu. Don't say, I should have got my flu shot. Call your doctor or visit your pharmacist and get your flu shot today.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Helana, your resident health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. Many of us have heard this term before, but may not know what it really means. Compassionate living brings mindfulness and peace to the center of your daily life. Compassionate living can look like this. Number 1, be gentle with yourself and those around you. Number 2, choose to speak kindly to others, even when you're upset. Number 3, become a good listener and practice empathy at home and at work. We sometimes think in order to live with compassion, we have to become someone else. Not so. In fact, allowing peacefulness to be at the center of our daily interactions is something we can practice every day. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com.
I ain't no better than you, and you ain't no better than me. But we all have something in common. We all are species, seeds of God's creation.
Tune in to Messages in the Music every Friday night with Joey T, midnight to 6 a.m. right here on WURD.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
Okay, we're back at it here for our State of Black Men Micro Summit. This is our first State of Black Men Micro Summit here on Reality Check WURD. Based on listener and viewer response, it sounds like we're going to have to do this again, and we're going to have to do it very soon. So I'm happy about that. Definitely willing to do that. We've got joining us, we're in the policy phase of this discussion. We have Councilmember Philadelphia City Council Member Isaiah Thomas, also joining us, Pennsylvania State Representative Chris Rabb, and Martin Pratt of Philly Your Black News, still online with us via Skype. We now have State Representative Chris Rabb joining us by Skype, so you can watch us on WURD TV. We are at facebook.com/4WURD, the WURD TV live stream there, and also youtube.com/onWURD as well. I'm Charles Ellison. I'm on @Ellison Report on twitter.com. Councilman, you were about to say something before we went to break.
Yeah, so I just wanted to just give an example of what Rep. Brad was talking about as it relates to these policy initiatives. So
I recently introduced a bill in City Council. It's called a Driving Equity Bill, Driving Equality Bill. And basically what we're looking to do is we're looking to take away the responsibility of simple stops from police. You know, I'm just, as a black man born and raised in this city, I spent a lot of time driving over the last couple of years, and at the height of this stop and frisk policy, initiative to combat crime. So I know firsthand that this is an issue that black men experience as it relates to being disproportionately stopped. We also relied for this particular effort on support from a lot of different entities, including research from Pew, as well as stats and information from the Public Defender's Office. And, based on my lived experience as well as the data, my theory proved to be true, that black men are disproportionately stopped. And I'm pretty sure most of us knew that already. And so just looking at that one issue alone, right, it took us about 6 months just to draft a bill to be introduced. It will probably take us another 6 months before the bill goes to committee, because we have to study a lot of different models as it relates to the implementation of how you give a citation. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, you agree with me that it doesn't require police power and hours and dollars to write a ticket for tinted windows or for a busted taillight, but that person still must get the citation for the traffic violation. So now we're taking that responsibility away from police, primarily, right? Not completely, but primarily. And we're looking at another means to issue those citations. What does the implementation process look like? So that alone will take at least 6 months. And that just puts me in a position to try to get the bill passed into law. Once it's passed into law, then it's like, okay, well, now that this is a law, then, will the mayor sign or veto, right? Hypothetically speaking, let's say the mayor signs it into law. Then we're still looking at another 6 months to actually implement it. So the first 6 months is to study the implementation. Then you're looking at another 6 months to implement it. So one bill, right, one bill could take me nearly an entire term in council just to complete. And I know people are frustrated when they see how slow government works. I, too, am frustrated when I see how slow government works. But people have to understand that these are institutions, like Rep. Rab said earlier, that have been in place for generations. It is going to take us time to put us in a position where these institutions no longer suppress us the way they traditionally have.
Right. Representative, you had actually recently introduced legislation. And that's the going back to a phrase you used, Councilmember Thomas, like the elephant in the room. And obviously we haven't touched on, but we are kind of in this conversation touching on the police killing of Walter Wallace Jr. And there were a lot of other issues beyond just the police accountability, police violence issue. There's like the mental health and wellness interventions aspect of this. You had recently introduced some legislation to create something called PEN Corps, right? And that's about mental health and what, because that was a real significant element. We found out after the fact Wallace was bipolar. The mental health intervention was just not there in this particular episode. Talk about that legislation, how this applies to, especially when we talk about black male trauma.
Yeah, well, I mean, this couples nicely with what the councilman was talking about, because the family called for help. They didn't call the police, they called for help, but the police showed up, right? So that's a flaw in the system. So we have a systemic issue that negatively impacts folks with mental health issues, and even more so if you're black or brown. And when you put it in when that person is inhabiting a black male body, it's worse, because we are the face of criminality in this society. Even though we shouldn't be, we are. And so the response to Walter Wallace Jr. Was ratcheted up because of the body he inhabited. And so the solutions we seek are really less about reforming police. It's really about doubling down on what we call community safety. And I use the term community safety and not public safety, because we've had public safety because the public is white people. When we're being honest, when we talk about policy, we're talking about practice. Public safety is how do we protect white women and girls. If you look at the statue in front of the police headquarters, it's a 50s era white police officer holding a white girl. Like, if there's ever like a visual metaphor for what policing, modern policing has become, it is that. And we need to talk about community safety, which means what will it take? How can government assist other stakeholders to make sure that anyone of any community feels equally protected and safe in the body they inhabit, in the municipality they inhabit, in the commonwealth in which they live. And that's important. And so my bill basically says, let us create a separate entity to address community safety and public health, right? So they could have been contact tracers. They could have been conflict resolution professionals, folks who have criminal records, folks who are returning citizens who could squash stuff before they blow up, right? This could deal with mental health and well-being and wellness checks on our seniors. None of this requires a badge or firearms or the authority to arrest. If you look at the vast majority of the activity, and there's been a number of studies that do this, New Orleans is a good example. There's a pie chart that someone sent me that shows how the work hours of all police in the New Orleans Police Department and where their efforts go. The percentage of them tracing, tracking down rapists and murderers is like less than 1%. But that's probably the thing that most people want police to do the most, is to go after the bad guys. And the bad guys are not driving cars with broken taillights. That is not the priority, right? And that shouldn't even be a part of policing as we know it, nor should be going after undocumented brothers and sisters, nor should it be squashing domestic violence. There are people who do that. And there's so many people who right now, who've never even considered being a cop, could disarm someone with mental health issues. Because you ever heard of a nurse? I mean, listen, nurses put their lives on the line every day. They deal with mental health like nobody's business. Folks who have martial arts training, who use it for self-defense and not for purposes of terror, right? We have all these resources. Let's put together an entity called Penn Corps that allows folks to help communities and be called on by communities. So they're not being called on by the mayor. They're not being called on by the governor, like National Guard and stuff. We had 8 white guys with AR-15s and camouflage in my neighborhood in Cedarbrook, Mount Airy, and they were guarding a pretzel shop, a corporate-owned pretzel shop. I mean, I'm like, what are they doing here? We don't need those folks. We need people from our own communities being empowered to address things in a preventative way. And that's the type of conversation we need to have within our communities. And we can start with just black men talking about the things that impact us the most.
Councilman, thank you for that, Representative. Councilman, and feel free to sort of respond to what the representative was just saying, address it. But I have a question here from a viewer on WURD TV. Makes a very good point, and goes back to your earlier point, Councilman, about that policy-making process, right? And how it takes time. And a lot of times people don't understand that, especially if they're at the if they're at the sort of the scope's end, or being targeted by that policy-making process or by those institutions. But Junior Lee says, so how about a creative policy that speeds up the policy process? Start now. Maybe it will be done in the next 20 to 50 years, which will probably be necessary then as well. But it's an interesting point. Go ahead, Councilman.
So it depends on what the bill is. I don't think that there is a way for me to speed up this process, because you have to get it right? Like, I have to convince either 9 people on council or 12 people on council that this is the best way to go. I have to convince myself. I have to figure out fiscally how will this work with the not just with our general annual operating budget, but also with the operating budget that we're looking at because of the deficit. And so at the end of the day, there is no way to speed up the legislative process, because when you're talking about a bill that addresses an institution like policing and saying police will not pull you over for a simple traffic violation, I can't fast forward that. Now, I wish I was a little smarter than what I was. Maybe I should have had some better grades in high school and college, and maybe that'll help. But I mean, in all seriousness, there is no way to speed this up. I mean, when you look at this bill specifically as an example, right, we're eventually going to have to go to court to argue precedent, because what we're saying is that the motor vehicle code, which is state law that Rep. Rabb and his team out there will never be able to get changed, can be implemented in a different way based on the local municipality. So we're going to argue that yes, that they have jurisdiction over what the motor vehicle code is, but we as a municipality can decide how we implement it locally. And so, again, this is something that's never been done before. These are the type of swings you have to take when you're trying to address institutions that have traditionally, oppressed us. I'll give you another short example, Act 111. Every time I get the opportunity to talk about Act 111, I try to bring it up because it's the single most important piece of legislation as it relates to police accountability, right? If we look at the Walter Wallace situation, let's just say hypothetically speaking, and I don't want to impact the investigation, let's say the mayor and the police commissioner determined that that officer should be fired. Bare minimum, those officers should be fired. Act 111, and based on past cases and situations, would put them in a position where not only would that decision be reversed, they will probably get back pay and possibly have grounds to even sue the city. So until we change some of this legislation that Brad talked about that's been around for some time, we won't be able to undo some of these institutions that oppress us. But I don't want people to think that we can fast forward the process, because if I fast forward the process thinking about my bill specifically, I'm probably going to get it wrong. It takes time to get it right.
But I just want to jump in real quick because the councilman is right. These processes take time, and some things really don't need to be rushed because we need to work out the details. But sometimes we can expedite things, and the councilman was part of some of that expedited work with the police reform working group when we got things done within 40 days that hadn't happened in 40 years. Because when we stormed the House floor, what's that?
Well, Brad, I was going to say, you got to explain to people why that happened, because, a big difference between you guys in the House is, you for example, you have bills that you've introduced that I personally support that you can't even get to the floor, right? So for us in council, we introduce a bill, it has to be read. For people in Harrisburg, Rap can introduce 250 bills, none of them can go to the floor. And so, I think, what you guys had to do just to get those bills read was, honestly, it was historic.
Right, but it was historic, and the lesson we can learn from that historic moment is it didn't happen. It happened because people took to the streets and organized, right? The reason these bills were passed in 40 days was not because I was some kind of, legislative genius. It was because we were inspired by the activism that was happening in the streets, by the peaceful protest that was happening in Philly and all across the globe after the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others. It was that mass mobilization that scared the bejesus out of my colleagues in Harrisburg, who were otherwise insulated for years and decades because they didn't see the crisis until it met them at the front door, which is an important lesson.
Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, for both the councilman and also our state legislator, one of the things you brought up was creating a core, like Penn Core. Could there be a think tank or a committee, we'll call it rather than having a think tank, a nonprofit and all that stuff, but could there be a committee that is intentional with taking retirees, people that have done policy before, that have lived through Rizzo and lived through the street, and partnering them with high school students / college students. So this is a funded city situation or state situation that they meet once a month or twice a month or whatever, and they each get a stipend for travel or whatever that is, but then looks at policies that are going to impact Philadelphia disproportionately in the next coming 5 to 7 years. Out of that core, instead of it going to the community per se, this specific core helps guide people that want to run for election, guide them in understanding policy and understanding and basically using what you guys were able to do in 40 days as the template. Okay, now we got the policy structure. We think we got everything right. What's going to be the action plan to get this on the floor in Harrisburg? Or what's going to be the action plan to get it on the city council, so it doesn't seem that it speeded up the process, but we're not having to react instantaneously. We actually have this core that's a think tank that's multi-generational.
Go ahead, Representative.
I'll jump in there.
Hold on, go ahead, Councilman. What were you about to say?
Yeah, no, I'll jump in. So I think you merged two different concepts, and I think it's important to recognize that we can't use government dollars
to do anything that's going to impact elections. So for us on the municipal side, we all have ledge staff. And our ledge staff, because I believe in collaboration and team, we work with a lot of different partners that provides us those information that you're talking about as it relates to the think tank. However, I don't want you to think that having another think tank will expedite the time it takes for legislation to get passed. On our end, on the city council side, that would not expedite the time it takes for legislation to get passed. I do think, though, it is good to put together entities, specifically those that are black-focused, because, again, while there is data and research out there, there aren't many entities that are black-focused, black-led, that constantly work on policy and provide policy information. Now, there are other organizations that do it, and they're actually very effective because they often say, hey, council member, look at this bill that we crafted and let us know what you think. Labor also does it often as well, too. And so which the concept you're talking about, it exists in pockets of the city. I don't necessarily think government can fund it. I'm always for anything that's pushing black folks in a black agenda. But on the political side, because you brought that up as it relates to, grooming the next set of candidates, we don't do a good job of that in Philadelphia. It took me 10 years to get from idea to being sworn in. And, not to brag or anything like that, I know that in this generation, I'm literally the only person to do it because of how many times I had to run and lose to get to my seat. I don't, and I have a great support system around me. The average person born and raised in Philadelphia that has, the heart that I have and the experience that I have, they're not going to be able to withstand the financial and emotional roller coaster that it takes to be able to get at the table based on the way things are set up right now. So it's imperative that we develop a bench to put ourselves in a position where we put quality people in elected office. But I can tell you, as a person that's run citywide right now, citywide often, there are not many black organizations that you have to stand in front of and talk about a black agenda for black people in order to get elected in this city. That's just what I think about.
Let me do this. Let me I have to take a break. Stay with us, Councilmember Thomas, and also State Representative Rabb. Just staying with us for the hour, we also have Martin Pratt here. Just going to take a quick break here on our State of Black Men Micro Summit on Reality Check. WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. I'm Charles Ellison. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
Jefferson Health offers no-cost COVID-19 testing at St. Raymond of Pinafort Church. Testing is on Thursdays and Saturdays. For testing hours and more information, call 1-833-533-3463.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keep your dial locked
to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app.
Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right, we're talking about the state of black men here on Reality Check. Representative Rob, you had something to say? I think you were also wanted to launch into that conversation.
Sure, thank you. So there are different ways to convene folks, formally and informally, to teach ourselves what we need to know, to mobilize, to empower ourselves. There's no one right way to do it. When I think of think tank, I think of my days on Capitol Hill, where there are well-funded entities that just do research on different types of policies. And it could be for or related to black folk or women or immigrants or farmers. And they have an influence directly and indirectly on policymakers who are elected and appointed folks on the state or on the local, state, or federal level. But we can convene as communities to teach ourselves, to have study groups about the process. And I think there's the legislative process, which Councilman Thomas said so correctly. It takes time, and even if there's great passion, these things don't happen quickly. But the process by which we engage folks can be quicker than the 2-year or 4-year election cycle that a lot of folks think is what matters, and it's not. It's our ability to understand the power dynamics behind the policy making, knowing what the timeline is, knowing what the activities and resources and stakeholders involved in influencing the things we want. And so I'll give you an example. You know, I have a staff of 3 in my district office in Mount. Need to fix this pothole over here. I can work with council folk and the streets department, whomever, and say, hey, can we figure this out? Can you help us? But that's not something that state lawmakers do. Or can you, I have this zoning issue. I have no authority as a state legislator to do that. However, if people understand the complementary roles of elected officials and other democratic institutions, we will have greater collective wisdom to inform the policies that can help us on all these levels. And no one is, candidates and campaigns are not the appropriate vehicles to teach that. It's government.
And 2 things I'm seeing here too, and Martin, Councilman, I'd like you to chime in on this too. Part of it as well, I think there's a real big opportunity moment here after an election like this, after discussions like this, after, seeing the things that are happening tragically to Black men. We're in this big social justice moment right now, with George Floyd, Walter Wallace Jr., Jacob Flake, and others, countless others. Where, introducing policy or introducing that advocacy around the policy around Black men. And so, like, for example, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson just passed in both the House and the Senate recently a commission on the social status of Black men and boys act, right? So it's like, one, crafting legislation that specifically talks about Black men, addresses specific Black men issues, and then 2, we're talking about legislation or policy being crafted with equity impact statements and assessments. Well, what about, the type of legislation where every time legislation is being introduced, particularly in a big city like Philly that has a huge Black male population, Black male impact assessments, kind of like what you were doing, Councilman, as far as that, that driving while Black legislation, correct? But chime in, Councilman, and then Martin, you.
I mean, I love that theory. I love that concept. I love assessing, where we are and what we're doing, and I think that's important. But overall, I got a good pulse on the ground. I know we're doing bad, and it's important to know exactly how and where and what is impacting us. We started the Disadvantaged Communities Task Force on City Council, and I'm the co-chair of that. And we've done over 20 listening sessions across the city of Philadelphia through various professional sectors, through various neighborhoods and sections of the city. And we're going to continue to do it because we know people are still suffering. And we'll produce a report that will show our findings. And I know that's not exactly what you're talking about. And I agree. And I think in theory, it's important that we name Black men specifically and think and discuss and brainstorm ways we can allocate resources to address the issues that Black men are facing. And I think that starts with poverty. I think that's a huge issue that we have in the city. It starts with, it moves to education in our schools, and then it also touches the issues of policing, mass incarceration, and overall opportunity. The last thing I'll say is, I'm always going to be for a Black agenda. I think it's hard to come up with a document that all of us agree upon, but I do think that is important that, and I know Rep. Rabb is going to agree with this, that we really move on reparations and something around reparations for Black folks, while there is some level of sympathy for it. I've never seen an appetite. I come from African-centered schools, African-centered education, freedom school space, so I've been in this space my entire life. So that conversation has always existed in my space, but I've never seen this type of appetite for some form of reparations for Black folks. So I know folks have talked about, HBCUs being free, financial support, financial relief as it relates to college debt. There are a number of different ideas floating out there. I think that is something that we need to continue to highlight, continue to push, and try to get legislated. And I see that as our job, even though I can't do it on a local level. Not too much Rep. Rabinham could do on the state level. There are some ideas out there, but I think it's important that we keep the heat on that particular legislative issue as well.
Yeah. Martin, real quick. You see what I'm saying, Martin? Like, I mean, when you have specific or you have pieces of policy that are specifically addressing black men, I think that's part of it. That goes back to that first panel discussion, like something Torrin was saying, where he was like, you have like these high-level conversations, very public conversations about black men, and you made this point too, like, the brothers who are having the conversations or perceived as leading the conversations in public, they're like black millionaires and black billionaires. I mean, even like like black barbershop discussions, like on HBO, LeBron, it's just him and like several other millionaires, black millionaires, but we're not having like a discussion on a grassroots level. Go ahead, Martin, just kind of jump in on that.
Yeah, I think what Representative Rabb and also Councilman Thomas are talking about are excellent things and are very tangible within the political arena. And I'm looking forward to Councilman Thomas, the report, because I want to amplify that as black media. I'm interested in knowing what everyone is doing and making sure that, West Philly in the 60s and the 70s blocks, they know what's happening, even though they may not be in that particular councilman's district or the representative's district. I think that Philadelphia specifically, but black America as a whole, we have these pockets of information sources that are not equally distributed. And I think as a media person, that's my job to make sure that West Philly gets the word and also Germantown Avenue gets the word, and then also over here in Point Breeze, where I'm at, and gets the word in South Philly. So I think that those efforts have to be buoyed by the black media. And I definitely asked the councilman and also the state rep to make sure keep us honest. Keep the black media honest by saying, hey guys, I invited you out somewhere. You guys never showed up. Mm-hmm. I get that all the time after the fact. I'm like, well, I didn't get the email. I get a text. Everything the mayor does, I get a text and an email. I mean, literally every single thing this dude does, I get one. But when I'm trying to look for or get in contact with some council persons, I'm not going to name anybody. It's not nobody on the phone. But I can't get a message back until after it's over, and then they want coverage. And it's like, well, there were certain questions that I know my community wanted to ask and be involved in that conversation, and there's nothing there. So I think on both sides, particularly when it comes to black men, I definitely haven't cracked the code on how to get black men to be more engaged. But I do think a start is what our political representatives are doing being amplified so that black men do know there is somebody out there that is giving them an opportunity to show up and to be part of the dialogue.
Right. Hold on, all three of you. I have Taib out of Center City who just called in. I think he wants to add just a little bit of texture here to the conversation. Taib, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. And I'm calling from the 7th Ward. I'm calling from the 7th Ward. I don't claim Center City.
All right. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. But go ahead.
So, thank you for this conversation. I also wanted to mention that I was in a Zoom and my dad texted me and told me what you guys were talking about. And then I heard Isaiah's comments. And Isaiah, I have to give props to because as a political leader, he's been very outspoken in a way that, let's say, some of the gentlemen from the previous generation have not spoken out against structural racism in the region. And as an entrepreneur who is fortunate enough to punch above my weight class, and I operate in philanthropy, I operate in I own a co-working space, I have a real estate development company, I have a marketing agency that's been doing work for 15 years, and I've mentored on too many black and brown men and women to mention, and they have been treated terribly by the infrastructure of power, and particularly black power in the region. And I can introduce you to too many people that have come into rooms where people are talking about business development who have never run a business in their life. And we have an infrastructure and an ecosystem that services poverty but doesn't lift people out of poverty. And we have nurtured a lot of leaders who I could say respectfully have been so oppressed by a system that gets us to get along versus trying to create independent businesses that hire black and brown people. I'll let you continue with your discussion, but I have a program called IFLab. You can find it at iflabphilly.com. I have a series called In the Lab, where we have talked to national thought leaders about these issues. And I won a national challenge grant to mentor and create the first black incubator in the city. And I couldn't get meetings with people who are now talking about black entrepreneurship in the region. When I got $300,000 from the Knight Foundation to bring that program into the city, and I couldn't continue it because of some of the same structural racist institutions that claim to care about black people wouldn't even take a meeting with me. And I will leave it there. I love y'all.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, thank you so much, Taib, for sharing that. Yeah, appreciate it. Oh, real quick, let's go ahead and wrap up. Representative Rabb and then Councilmember Thomas. I'll give you a minute each. Go ahead, Rep. Rabb.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear from Brother Taib. He is he's a next level brother everybody should know about. And it is precisely because of mistreatment of black thought leaders and doers like him that there's such suspicion about establishment politics and systems that, frankly, you know, on the city level, are influenced to a greater or lesser extent by black folk, right? So that's a problem. But we have to disaggregate all this stuff. Just like folks are talking about the Latino vote, there's no such thing. There's a Puerto Rican vote and a Dominican vote and a Cuban vote, but there's no such thing as a Latino vote. It's this type of, you know, it's not a monolith, and black folks are not monolithic. And as a unapologetic black progressive, I'm not going to be confused for establishment players, and there's an opportunity here. And Brother Thomas was talking about reparations. When I announced my reparations bill, I specifically did not make it based on a study of how black folk were treated in this country. We have black luminaries who've been in academia for generations who can document all of that stuff. There are books written. We don't need another commission to do that when we have the black genius to document that right now. And as a result of my concern, I may real quick, there are two kind of research commissions that when we have a House resolution to say, please study this or please study that, these entities will do that. But those entities basically facilitate and aggregate the expertise of folks in the field. Well, since I already know all of those folks, I literally could shorten the process around reparations by up to 2 years. But we have to understand the systems that we
how that all works,
and then figure out what to do and to share that with others.
You get the last word, Councilmember Thomas.
I'm gonna be brief. First of all, I want to thank you, Charles, for putting this together. Thank everybody for being a part of this conversation. Those in the listener audience, definitely huge shout out to Taib. Earlier, we talked about policy and the time it takes for policy. He's a great example of somebody who helps provide influence and guidance to elected officials as it relates to what we need to be doing and how we need to be moving for black folks. And just listening to him also reminded me that through the Disadvantaged Communities Task Force, we came up with the Arts and Culture Task Force, which is directly an act from the people. Look, I can't paint a paintbrush. You know, I'm not rapping the lyrics. I'm not an artist at all. But at the end of the day, this is something that I'm spearheading based on the communication from the people. And I know we talked about black media and black press. I've only been in council for about 11 months now, and black media has been awesome. So I've had some issues with media. I've had some issues with communication, none being black. So please keep doing what you're doing. I think it's important to highlight the great work of elected officials, and just know that it's very difficult for that to be done. Look, I don't know many black elected officials that's not progressive here in the city of Philadelphia, and I work with a lot of them. But at the end of the day, we're not doing a good job of controlling our own narrative, and I cannot blame black media for that. With that being said, my contact information is isaiah.thomas@phila.gov. I am Isaiah Thomas on most platforms, and people can feel free to reach out to me if you're press or media and feel like you're not getting our media and advisory alerts, so we can make sure we keep you in the loop, and we will do a better job. We've only been in for 11 months. I've only had a comms director for a lot less time than that, and I'll do better myself to try to make sure that the information is out there and it's transparent. So thank you, Charles. Thank you to everybody else. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well. I appreciate those comments. Councilmember Isaiah Thomas is going to get the last word. Councilman Isaiah Thomas, I think it's PHL council.com/Isaiah Thomas. Also, Pennsylvania State Representative Chris Rabb is at pahouse.com/Rabb, R-A-B-B. Definitely, you can reach him there, especially if you're a constituent, you're in the 200th Legislative District, both joining us here on our State of Black Men Micro Summit on Reality Check. Councilman, Representative, really appreciate both your times. I know you have busy schedules, got a lot going on, but you gave us about an hour of your time, of your day, and so I'm going to give you the remaining 23 hours. So have at it. Continue to do the good work. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
All right. Let me take a break, and when we come back, we will continue our State of Black Men Micro Summit here on Reality Check. We have Reverend Gregory Holston is scheduled to join us. Also, John Solomon of Endangered Kind is supposed to be joining us as well. I think I still got you, Martin, right? You still hanging around, Martin? All right, Martin Pratt's still going to hang around with us. Martin Pratt of Philly Your Black News. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
At PICO, we know one thing is certain. Times have changed. From kitchen classrooms to couch conference calls, searching for a new job, or new ways to keep your family connected. These changes have become a part of our reality. That's why our teams are working 24/7 to meet the needs of our communities. So no matter how much things change, you can depend on PICO to be there with the energy and help you need to power through. Learn more at pico.com.
Tune in Saturdays from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. to hear Empire Capital and Consulting founder Mark Palmer's show titled Black Money, Black Power. This show centers around black money and how black power is derived from money. Tune in every Saturday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Black Money, Black Power. Hosted by Mark Palmer.
Too close to call. And all eyes are on Philly. Stay tuned to WURD. This is Word Radio. 96.1 FM. And 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Streaming live on WordRadio.com, the Word Radio app, and watch live on Word TV via Facebook and YouTube. Word Radio. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, back at it here on Reality Check. I'm Charles Ellison, host, executive producer, creator of Reality Check. I'm at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. We are engaged in a State of Black Men Micro Summit. I call it a Micro Summit. Don't have a full summit because we're not in person. And obviously, we're going to need multiple parts of this discussion. And it's just, it's a start. It's a summit, hopefully leading to some action items or activity on a number of things that we've discussed. We do appreciate everyone listening in. We see folks have a lot of questions and comments on our Facebook live stream, facebook.com/forward. People are watching us at youtube.com/onWURD, Word Radio, Word TV, Word app as well. Martin Pratt's been staying with us for the whole 3 hours of the State of Black Men Micro Summit. So I really appreciate that. Philly Your Black News. Thank you, Martin. He's at PHL Your BLK News or at LMJ Pratt on social media, on Twitter, more specifically where we roll. Now joining us now is Reverend Gregory Holston is joining us by phone here on Reality Check. We are also scheduled to have John Solomon of Endangered Kind. I don't know if we have him yet, but we'll just start with Reverend Holston, who is part of is one of the chairs of the committees for Philadelphia Black Clergy and Vicinity. He joins us by phone here on Reality Check. Reverend, how are you doing, sir?
Good afternoon. Doing well. Doing well.
All right. Good afternoon. That's right. We're in the afternoon phase now, just about 2 minutes ago. No, it's good to have you. Thanks so much. Do we have, I don't think we have John Solomon yet, so hopefully we'll get him a little bit later on. So I don't know if you've been listening to, no, we don't have him yet, but when he comes on, we'll bring him on. I don't know if you've been able to listen to the past 2 hours of the discussion, Reverend, but we're talking about the state of black men, and kind of let's get sort of your top line assessment of things like where we need to go from here, right? Where we need to go from here, because we had this big discussion about black men and politics, the way the black male vote performs and behaves. But we need to have a discussion about like the state of black men, their condition, and how we also, because it's in a condition of crisis. So like, how do we heal that condition? How do we create a framework that talks about black men, or that leads us to black male progress?
That's very powerful questions to be able to answer. And so I would probably say I'm a little older. I'm 58, so my thinking may be a little bit different than most. But
that's good. We got the multi-generational aspect down there because we got some Gen X, we got some millennial, and now we got a little bit of baby boomer. But go ahead.
You know, besides the spiritual, which I could talk a lot about, I would focus and move to our economic situation. The idea that black men don't have the economic opportunities to use their skills and gifts and talents in ways that are positive for our community, I still believe is probably central to all of the issues that ail us in our community, whether it's gun violence or whether it's drug addiction or any of the ills. Black men simply don't have the same opportunities for economic growth and development, to be able to care for their families, to play the traditional role as a provider. They don't have the opportunities to do that, and as long as those opportunities are not there, then many of the ills will continue for black men. And so what we need to do is what we've always needed to do, and what maybe we're in better position to do now. Pool our resources and develop the kinds of economic engines like our own banks and our own savings and loans and our own economic institutions, so we can start our own businesses, so African-American men could have some sense of independence and the resolve to keep more of our dollars in our community. The numbers are still the same. While the dollars rotate more in other communities, some as much as 10, 15 times, the dollars in our community only rotate less than one time, in fact, a tenth of the time. And what does that mean? Every time a dollar rotates, meaning $1 that is brought to our community is put in the hands of a black person by buying products, buying things from a store or whatever that are owned by black people, it decreases our unemployment rate by 20%.
Wow.
So we can be able to employ our own people, build our own businesses. That has been the most damaging of the racist attacks that have happened to us in our nation, whether it was Tulsa or Rosewood or Durham or Wilmington, North Carolina. It has always been trying to block us from our own economic independence, and that's what we need to work on, and that's what's going to help and move the lives of black men in a better position.
And you've been in that advocacy nonprofit action space for quite some time, Reverend. Like, how do we? What's that? You know, I always ask this question on a number of issues relevant to black people, or relevant to the condition of the black community, or trying to fix it. And what is that business case, right? You know, because there's just so much animosity and hostility, so much death and destruction that's been aimed at black men for several hundred years, and it's still continuing, right? And it's like, but what's that business case? What's that? Okay, so fine, you're still kind of caught up in your white supremacist mindset around black men, and you still have your misperceptions of black men. Okay, get that. But here's the business case. This is how, you know, aside from, you know, obviously I have to be kind of careful how I word this, right? Because it's like, no, we don't want you profiting off black men, but what's the business case, right? Like, you kind of started hinting at that just now, that like, hey, you know, if you tackle black male unemployment, high black male unemployment, or low labor rate, labor force participation in a city like Philadelphia, for example, this is overall, this is good for the economy. This is overall, this is good for the health of the city overall. You also eliminate millions, billions of dollars over time in social costs that have accumulated. So what's that business case? How do we frame that business case?
Well, you know, on the other side of that, why we haven't been able to do that is that communities have exploited us. Racism and economics go hand in hand. And so people have made profit. They have made money. In fact, we will never really end the racist society we have until we decouple it from economics. People have made money off of racism, and still, whether it's mass incarceration or slavery or Jim Crow or redlining or gentrification, institutions have made money off black people. In fact, oftentimes, emerging communities, immigrant communities, we're told, if you want to make money and make it in America, plant your businesses in the black community. I heard one phrase that we are like liquid money, that you can come in and get paid right away by servicing the needs of the black community. And so all of America has benefited off of our community. And so if you're really serious about making racial change, you really want to attack it, systematic racism, the first thing you're going to do is help provide capital for black people to start black businesses, so that finally we can be able to control the economics of our own community and be able to put our own people to work.
Yeah. Martin, we got online with us too, Reverend. And before I have Martin chime in with a question or comment, phone lines are open. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. If you have a question, you want to join in, offer some perspective, a layer of opinion on this State of Black Men Micro Summit here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Martin, go ahead.
I'm just curious, from the Reverend's background and his knowledge of Philly and Philadelphia black men. Brett, what do you think would be a carrot or an enticement, so to speak, for a physical or virtual gathering of black men from multicultural, multi-generational, that we could dangle in front of the black male audience here in Philadelphia? Is it I hear constantly some people talk about jobs. I know that we're undereducated as black men in Philadelphia. What do you think are the hot button issues that black men in Philadelphia specifically would show up to and want to talk about?
Wow, that again, that's probably a generational conversation about what slice of black men are you talking about. We have a whole generation of black men that are young and have been living in poverty their whole lives, and their generations in poverty, and they haven't seen any change in any of this stuff. We talk about manufacturing plants leaving Philadelphia over 60 years ago, and no real institution has taken over those places to provide jobs for our people. And so you got a whole group of young people who simply, are checking out of some of this stuff. And then you have a whole group of black middle-class folk who still are trying to achieve through the system and their battles and their concerns. And so we're not a monolithic group of people. We have different ways of thinking. I think first, probably some kind of virtual just sharing. I don't even think all black people or black men really know each other. These generations are moving quickly, and we don't even understand each other. And so to come around first with just a general understanding of people being able to express where they're at, whether they're dealing with gun violence, whether they've come out of prison, whether they're dealing with working $7.25 job every day, whether they're working fast food, whether they're just trying to get a college education. I think really just the network of just coming together and the willingness to hear each other's stories is probably the commonplace that we need to start with.
Yeah, just that need for that fellowship and that ministry, in a sense, not specifically in a religious or organized religious sense, but that brother, that fellowship, that brotherhood moments or opportunity moments. Those are I always hear that they're not as substantial or as frequent as people would like them. Martin, it sounds like you had something else.
Does the Reverend think that one of the things I'm starting to unpack about Philadelphia, I've only been here 2 years, but I think that I need to to have a specific North Philly conversation, a specific South Philly conversation, and a specific West Philly conversation. Is that, does Rev think that that would also be valuable to segment those conversations differently by geographical location?
Go ahead, Reverend.
Hello? I would have to go deeper. That you know, there are local community leaders and multiple leaders in South Philly and West Philly and North Philly and Northwest Philadelphia that have ideas and thoughts that to build a kind of overall black male summit for it to really represent all of Philadelphia. It will take work by starting at the local community leaders in their local areas, which means much deeper than just West Philly, but certain segments of West Philly, and then build the conversations forward so that okay, we're going to have another conversation with the folk over on this side of West Philly, and then we're going to have another conversation with the folk in this part of West Philly, and now we're going to connect our conversations together. I really think that kind of work, which is what, in some sense, what we call organizing, to the listening campaigns that really need to happen in the black community, that we've really been advocating for, that if we do more of that, it'll start to connect us together and really build more of a common agenda that really is rooted completely in the community.
Yeah. Once again, phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Just keeping the phone lines open, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Here on Reality Check, and we're talking about black men. Oh yeah, go ahead, Martin.
Rev, would you say, let us know, do you know any black men that voted for Trump?
I know, I suspect some that didn't tell me that they did, but yeah, I mean,
But physically, you haven't had a conversation with brothers saying, man, I can't do Biden, I gotta do Trump. You haven't had a conversation with somebody that said that.
Yes,
to you.
I've had those conversations. And,
okay, so you have. Okay.
Yeah, I had them, and some liked his posturing, and they had respect for his posturing. They knew little of his policies, but more of his attitude.
His machismo.
Yes, I don't want to use that phrase. I just try to use posturing without putting it favorably or unfavorably. But they some have liked and have experienced some economic success under him. He did give some amount of more money to certain criminal justice kind of reform issues, and so some people were responsive to that. But it has been very, very few. But mostly it's been disappointment in the Democratic Party. For 60 years, we have supported them, and our communities haven't changed, which is a truth that is real. And I understood why people said that they were going to vote for Trump for that reason, because they could not give their vote again to the Democrats because they haven't seen the kind of support necessary to transform our communities. I push back on that really hard. But,
which is interesting because, I mean, it's like, where does that expectation that you'll get support from Trump, from Republicans come from? Like, I get it too. I understand. Like, you have, like, especially in like a Democratic-run city like Philadelphia, people are going to have that sentiment, and Democrats in the city really need to address that, and they need to address it. They need to tackle it, like, very like head on. Like, you're not doing anything for black men in the city of Philadelphia. High black male illiteracy rates, high black male education achievement gap rates, high black male unemployment, high black male poverty. Like, these things are just, like, not addressed. I mean, they've been going on since as long as I can remember, since as long as you can remember, Reverend, growing up in Philly, right? So we're seeing these conditions fester in Philly and fester everywhere else in every other major metropolitan center, urban, suburban, even rural, so it's like that's just not being tackled head on, which is one of the reasons we're having this discussion, to kind of try to push the needle in some respects But it's funny, people are like, well, you really have an expectation. So you're looking at the other side and you actually see something that the other side is doing that actually gives you an expectation that something that they'll actually be, that they will do something, that they're actually going to move in your interest. That it just it's interesting to me. I think it kind of baffles me a bit.
It is very interesting, and I'm just trying to explain it. I'm not trying to do any more than just.
Oh yeah, right. No, I know. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but I will say that they some of this also was, and I think more so the first time around, is a protest vote of Democrats. You cannot take us for granted, and you've been taking us for granted, and we come out and we deliver our votes, and we every 4 years you come around. You don't knock on these doors any other time, and when we're suffering like this every day, we can't find you. And so, so don't come now expecting us to run out and vote and support you and give you power, and when that power doesn't translate into a change in our community.
Right. Hold on one second, Reverend. I'm just going to do a break. We have Tyrone out of North Philly. Stand by, Tyrone. We'll take you after the break. Let me just take a quick break here, do a little bit of housekeeping. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. We're having a State of Black Men micro summit here. Yes, definitely. I hear you. Got a listener here. Haley Stephen Alston, he felt like the program was straying off course a little bit. We're getting back on course. If you did feel like that, just making sure we're sticking with black men. We're specifically focused on black men today. I know it's hard to resist the temptation of then having a big general philosophical discussion about black people, but we do need to focus on black men. We would love to get your thoughts on that. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check, State of Black Men Micro Summit. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Keeping you informed. As a community service, WURD Radio and the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium wants to keep you informed about where you can get no-cost, barrier-free COVID-19 testing this week. Thursday, November 5th, from 3 p.m. till 7 p.m. at 1312 Willow Street, Norristown, Pennsylvania. And Saturday, November 7th, from 12 noon till 3 p.m. at Victory Christian Fellowship, 5220 Whitby Avenue in Philadelphia. Stay informed and stay well with WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. This is not a fad for us. We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are undeniably, indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media. WURD. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
Okay, welcome back to Reality Check here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDRadio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. We are engaged in our State of Black Men Micro Summit here. Did the whole 3 hours of Reality Check dedicated to a conversation on black men. I got Martin Pratt. He's been hanging on with me the whole few hours. Martin Pratt of Philly Your Black News. Go to @LMJ Pratt. But also on phone with us now is the Reverend Gregory Halston of Black Clergy of Philadelphia and vicinity, joining us as well and continuing that conversation. Phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let me go to Tyrone out of North Philly calling in for a Reality Check. Tyrone?
Hey, peace and blessings, good brother. How are you today?
All right. How are you doing, sir? All right.
I'm wonderful, wonderful. Much love and respect to all of your guests. And Brother Charles, I have talked to you on many occasions and saying that one of our critical problems is the violence and the killing of one another. Mm-hmm. It is just so impactful in terms of everything else that we're trying to do, that those who are doing it just don't see the reality of, it hurting everything else. But in terms of the conversation today, I would just like to, since we're talking philosophically, we have heard the brothers who gave the information about the statistic in terms of, you know, the number of us in business. We know about the racism. I would like to just say that we know about all the common things. We know they're known. Is it possible for us to one day just come together and just work with the unknown? And I'm going to just put a scenario out. And, you know, everyone that's speaking, man, I have great respect and love each one of you to death, because I know we are all working real hard trying to change this situation. And I keep really believing that if we start doing what we're doing to one another, that we can advance quicker. But I'd like to put on the table, can we just deal with the situation from ground zero? Meaning that we're not dealing with the racism, we're not dealing with the statistic of who's in business and how many in business. We're not dealing with the reality that a dollar don't last in our community. Can we come up with a plan or a strategic tool to just do something from ground zero and putting everything off the table or out of the way and just going from ground zero? I know that might seem impossible, but I'm ready to deal with the unknown. So thank you, brother, for allowing me to share.
No, I appreciate you. Thanks so much. Always good to hear from Brother Tyrone. Reverend, well, hold on one second. Let me take real quick Derek out of Colorado, calling from the Rocky Mountain State here on Reality Check. Derek?
Yeah, you know, Charles, I was going to say, I remember a long time ago, it was dealing with black men when they had Richard Nixon. He had something called black capitalism, and he was working with helping black people get their businesses, and then they had another one with the trade organizations. It was called the Philadelphia Plan. And I don't know if you, I remember hearing about that when I was
I remember that.
I was a child and everything. Whatever it became of that was supposed to be done nationwide. Was this that same thing they're trying to do now? But they're approaching some of the Joe Biden becomes president or Trump stays in office. Is that something? Is that going to be impossible to do, or is it something that we're just spinning our wheels? They've been talking about that was over almost 50-some years ago, and we seem like we're in the same situation about the businesses, about the trade organizations. There's going to be another 50 or 100 years from now that we're going to meet. Whoever is going to be sitting at the table is going to be talking about the same issues they talked about in 2020, and we're going to be in the same situation. Or is it going to be, have you seen any movement or progress, or the things happen with that Philadelphia plan, or is this that plan, what is the one Joe Biden's having? Is that something
that's a good question.
That can be? Is that something that's going to be? Is that something that can be turned into a reality instead of something to? I think Nixon was trying to get votes or whatever he's trying to do, and the same thing with Trump and everything. And some things with the same Democratic and Joe Biden and all that. Is that going to be the same thing? We're going to find ourselves 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, let me go ahead and have. Thanks, Derek, for that question. I appreciate that. Go ahead, Reverend. Before I bring on one other caller too.
Yeah, I do remember the Philadelphia plan, and I do remember several other plans. In fact, and usually these plans fail because they don't have enough support politically and also community-wise. And so I want to get back to, we can talk about the overall plans, and I think one great thing that's happening right now that black people can really get behind is the idea of a Philadelphia public bank, using the resources of our city governments and our bigger institutions to drive dollars into the poorest communities. That's a great idea to get capital into our communities so that people start businesses. But also, I want to be clear with the brother talking about what can we do right now. I mean, we have stores in our community right now that are people are there who are not from our community, and we need to know how the economic system works We need to understand what distributors are and how to sell an item at profit. We need to be able to, we have our houses, we have our places. We can go to these same distributors and buy stuff and be able to sell it at a profit and make money in our own community. Nothing is stopping us from doing that. And getting our young people, instead of being selling drugs on the street, selling the same kind of products that are in stores and selling it at a profit margin. But we don't teach enough of our kids exactly how this economic system really works.
Yeah. Let me do Maurice out of Southwest is calling in for a reality check as we have our State of Black Men Micro Summit. Maurice?
I don't know why I'm not sitting there at the table, but listen, let me tell you something.
Yeah, here you are. We brought you on the table now. Go ahead.
Well, it's about time. The problem is right now is that we done taught our kids that working at those jobs that's in our neighborhood, which we should have, and the business that we had, but they watched us and learned from us how to run them. We told our kids go to college. You don't need to work like that. You don't need them kind of. You don't need.
Amen, Maurice. Amen.
Let's wake up, people. The only person that hurt black people is black people. Let's stop the nonsense. I remember 52nd Street used to be the glory. Now it's Vietnam. I'm trying to tell you what's going on. You don't. People don't understand. If you got a business you love, you never work. You may be there 16 hours, but guess what? You can't wait just to open up again. That's when you love your business, and you build structure like that. Yeah, it's kids that you got that can go to college and learn, but you always got to keep the base that got you there. And that's when I remember up and down 50 Street used to be a family called the Kavanaughs or something like that. It was a black company. They had 5 dry cleaners up and down the strip from Parkside to Baltimore Avenue. Not one exists now. I can't even, if I walk up 52nd Street, I might find 5 stores that may seem to be black, and probably one of them is not black. Somebody's fronting like they own it, but they don't own it. These are the things that these are $1 million companies in our neighborhood. We don't even pay attention. If you look at the Latino signs up on the stores, it don't say Julio store. You know what it says? On the side, corporation. We're not paying attention. They buy as a unit all them stores at the same distributor and save money. And if one of them runs out of something, they could call the other store and say, yo, man, I'm out of tomatoes. Can you spare some tomatoes? That person will bring it to them. We don't do that. We got to take care of we keep talking about our hood and all this nonsense. Well, let's be for real and take care of our hood and open up businesses and stop complaining that these people are getting some kind of secret money I don't know about. I never heard of it. But every time I ask the young brothers, won't you open up something? Man, they're getting money to do this. Well, you getting money too. You're on the corner. Won't you open up something legit so you can close your eyes at night and don't have to worry every time you hear the door knock? See, they don't understand that, and that's what we need to be teaching. And here, let me hit this last thing. If
real quick,
the city was run by Republicans sitting up there in city council right now, this town would be on fire because we'd be crying and howling and screaming, making sure they did their job. But because they're black, we give them a pass and don't put the pressure on them and let them slide, and they keep getting reelected and reelected. And I'm telling you, and I'm tired of some of the hosts on this station protecting them, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. All right. No, I appreciate that, Maurice. We have John Solomon. John Solomon is joining us. I think I heard someone just now.
Yeah, that's one.
Martin, real quick, go ahead.
Maurice, I can't let Maurice's comment just stand there.
Yeah.
One thing, Brother Maurice, on 52nd Street, there's going to be a new development that will be an incubator for black businesses. Brother Smith of Little Giant Creative, you can Google Little Giant Creative and Black Incubator on 52nd Street. He will be opening that. That was pre-COVID. I believe all the plans have already been laid out. They already have the building. And so he actually owns the only black co-working space in Philadelphia.
That's Taib Smith. Yeah, Taib Smith called us. He called us earlier, too.
Right. And so he's going to be opening a center for black businesses, corporations, to start up right there on 52nd in the hub of West Philly. So, I mean, not that we only have one, but I'm just saying there is a juxtaposition to that. There are folks that are in the city working on that right now currently, and it is difficult. but we are doing it.
And to Maurice's point, real quick before I bring on John Solomon to offer some texture on this as well. John Solomon of Endangered Kind. And these are great. These sorts of ideas and concepts and things in motion are really great. And to Maurice's point, a lot of times we do nibble around the edges, and I feel like we need to be much more aggressive. Like I'm talking about like direct resources and time, direct investment. Cutting checks to folks to do things, to get things done, to open up
the Black Resilience Fund.
Like the Black Resilience Fund. Like, the brother out there in Portland, we should have had him on too. We'll get him on for part 2. He just started a fund. He ain't checking with no one. He didn't kiss no political rings. He started a fund. Within 2 months, they raised $1.5 million. I'm sure they raised more since we last talked to him. And he just cut checks. It was no questions asked. You didn't have to fill out paperwork. You didn't have to go through a whole bureaucracy. You didn't have to take classes. It was just like, oh, you Black, you live in this area, you going through pandemic, you in need. I can get your rent paid. I can get, so you can buy some groceries. That's the kind of activity we need. I think we nibble around the edges and we create all these sophisticated sounding programs that are all complex. And some of the programs, like some of these nonprofits out there, like some of the big ticket, big name nonprofits, urban leagues, I'm looking at you, all you're doing is you're being like front door salesmen for the big banks, so they can get new Black customers and have a good relationship. Say, no, direct checks in the people's pockets, or direct jobs, like direct people, brothers getting directly hired to do things. Let me not go on a rant. John Solomon from Endangered Kind is joining us now. John Solomon, add some more layer to this, particularly as far as like from a young Black man's perspective, what needs to happen to reverse these conditions.
I kind of caught the end of the conversation, so I wasn't here from start to finish. I heard the two guys speak about a few things, but can you kind of elaborate on what exactly you want to talk about?
Sure. So we're talking about this is our State of Black Men Micro Summit, and we had you on before when we were talking about violence. But now we're talking about, like, we've had this discussion for a few weeks before the election about Black men and how Black men are thinking, how Black men are behaving, how they're performing electorally at the vote. Some Black men, a few Black men went for Donald Trump in 2016. Apparently it happened again in 2020. But we want to talk about what do we need to do to make Black men move forward, right? Where do we go from here? And so looking at that from the perspective of a young Gen Z age Black man, what do you think we're falling short on? Like, what do we need to, what are the priority, what do we need to prioritize for young brothers to get us moving forward, to get Black men moving forward?
Well, you always will have to prioritize economics. It's like, you speak about politics. To me, politics without economics is doesn't really get us anywhere. So as far as my perspective on things, I think it's very important that we, for one, before we do anything, we need to do a better job at learning how to connect with young people. For generations, there's been a strong disconnect between the younger generation and the older generation. So any wisdom or knowledge that an elder might have in regards to economics or entrepreneurship isn't transferred over to the young generation because the lines of communication is so closed that we don't even communicate with each other. And I've seen this over the years. I've seen it since I was young. So it's like we have to get back to connecting the young people and the elders first before we do anything. Because we could come up with all the plans, whether it's an economic plan, a political plan, but as long as there's a disconnect between these young people and elders, we're not going to progress as a collective. So I think we need to start with simply learning how to connect with each other. And the elders that are in positions that they worked for over the years and was able to accumulate resources, them being willing to invest in these young people and give them the plans that they think needs to be implemented in our community moving forward. So that's really my perspective, and I'm always going to speak about the disconnect between young people and elders because it's a huge disconnect. that's been happening for years that nobody really wants to address, or some people overlook it. And when we're divided in that way, it's very hard for us to be effective at being economically independent and politically independent as a people. So I mean, that's my perspective.
Hey, you know, and thank you for that. Yeah, and endangeredkind.com for more information on what John Solomon is up to. Go ahead, Reverend. I heard you about to chime in.
Yeah, absolutely. What John said is absolutely the truth. Where there is a great disconnect between the young people that are in Philadelphia and the next generation and the political elite in this town, and the level of poverty that they are experiencing is shaping their attitudes and their actions, and also the reality is that there's a generation that has not been there for this generation of young people. We haven't been there for them when they were little children. We haven't been there with them to be the Boy Scout leader or the basketball coach or the baseball coach. We haven't been there, and much of it was because of mass incarceration. Many of us were in jail and stripped away from our own children, so we weren't there to nurture them and to love them and provide a way of connecting with them. And so now this disconnect exists, and we want to build a community. How can we build it if we're not connected to one another and we're not dealing with the hurt and the pain of the disconnection from all those many years? So that's got to be a part of the work that we do.
Yeah. Let me do this. John, hold on for a moment. Reverend, you as well. We got Martin Pratt here. We're going to take a break. And before we head into the final segment, the final piece or part of our State of Black Man or State of Black Men micro summit here on Reality Check WURD. So we got John Solomon of Endangered Kind. Go to endangeredkind.com. By the way, too, brother, I got a T-shirt and a hat from Endangered Kind. I appreciate that. Some nice threads. I thank you for that. It did get delivered, and I've been wearing it. So thank you. But go to endangeredkind.com. Reverend Halston of Black Clergy of Philly and Vicinity, Martin Pratt of Philly Your Black News. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Tune in every Saturday at 4 p.m. for the Did You Know Show with host Bryant Green, right here on WURD 96.1 FM and 900 AM.
He's back.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real
with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
In times like these, we have to stay connected.
At a brand new time.
Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD.
Keeping it real.
With the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
This program is pre-recorded.
No phone calls, please.
Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM. WURDradio.com.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to our State of Black Men micro summit here on Reality Check. We've got Reverend Gregory Holston, Black Clergy of Philly and Vicinity, Martin Pratt of Philly Your Black News, and John Solomon, Philadelphia-based Endangered Kinds nonprofit advocacy group. Go to endangeredkind.com. John, you talk about that need to connect or to help bridge that divide between young people, young black men, and the elders. What's that look like to you? What's the framework for that? Trying to get into a little bit more detail, or what could the framework or the concept look like, right? Because it can be hard. It can be very difficult for, say, elders or for older black people or older black men, to maybe try to have those kinds of conversations with younger black men or Gen Z age or younger black men. There could be differences in terms of tone, in terms of lexicon, vernacular, language, what have you, or in terms of attitude. You got to first kind of crack those codes and break through that. If you're not sort of talking to a young brother or a specific set of brothers in a certain way, then it just all falls flat. What does that frame? And then you have to be structured about this, the way we go about it, I guess. So what does that look like to you in your mind, John, when we think about connecting those younger generations with those elders? Because that, you're right, you're absolutely right, you're spot on with that. That has to happen.
This process is a long process because we've been so divided for so many years. And first and foremost, it always starts with mentality. I feel like it's a little bit challenging for elders to remove ego and to be able to deal with younger people because they have egos as well. So it's a really patient process. But how I see things, you have to me, you have to start with actually putting young people at the forefront. It's very simple to me, and we can get complex about it because there's so many different layers. But it simply starts with opening up the doors for them to have a voice and speak on platforms such as this, and doing a better job at getting them getting their voices out there and actually putting them on platforms where people are willing to seek to understand what it is that they need and want for themselves and what they went through growing up as a child. I don't feel like people are seeking to understand them. I feel like many generations, including mine on up, we're quick to criticize. But like I spoke to you before, the generation that's under us, any generation that's under us, is a reflection of ourselves. So when we criticize young people based off of their behavior, we have to first look at ourselves and hold ourselves accountable. And actually just, connect with who you know. I mean, you may have family members, you may have young people in your family, you may have young people in your community that you can, begin to establish a relationship with and follow up and sustain that relationship. And actually add value to their lives. I feel like there's not enough people that are in positions that's adding value to young people. Mm-hmm. And it's starting to show. Like, it's very evident that the value is not being added to them. So it's like, it's that simple for me, if that makes sense to you. I don't really try to get too complex with the solution and with connecting with these young people. It's really a simple thing. You know how to build relationships with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead, Reverend. Then I got Martin.
I would share with you that when I talk to men who many of them are the fathers of this younger generation and have been disconnected to that generation, disconnected to their own children, there's a lot of guilt and shame about not being there. And whether they were locked in jail or they were strung out on drugs, there is a lot of shame and guilt of now that my child is 25, 28, 30 years old, and I've been gone since they've been 3 or 4. How do I even reconnect? And how do I even face all the guilt and shame of not being there? And so some just check out. Some don't even try. And so we spend a lot of time trying to encourage them, saying that your children, no matter how long you've been gone, they still want you. They still want you in their life. And your words of encouragement to them still mean something, even if you haven't been there. And so this whole reconnection of a generation taken away because of mass incarceration and the crack cocaine addictions that happened in the 90s and the 2000s and is something that is critical to black men really being restored in our community.
Oh, Martin, go ahead. I think you were raising your hand earlier. Martin, can you hear us? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, so I wonder about the whole conversation between young and old, and doing it in a way that is maybe more organic. And I think that there is a way to do it where slightly generational steps.
Yeah.
So you have high school students, Gen Z, and then you got what do you call it?
Millennial, then Gen X.
Right.
Gen X,
then X, and then baby boomers.
Millennial, then baby boomer. Yeah.
Almost in their apprenticeship program.
Mm-hmm.
So high school students come into the program, or the conversation. Millennials come into the conversation from a give back, and Gen X comes in the conversation to facilitate, and then baby boomers.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, John, jump in here as far as like you see, kind of responding to what Reverend Alston was saying and what Martin was saying right now, like keeping it organic. And it's like that kind of goes back to your point about not getting too caught up in the sophistication or the detail, like what that looks like. Don't make it, just keep it simple, but also keep it organic. Go ahead, John.
So I wanted to touch on two things.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think this is relates to any generation, but we're specifically talking about the younger generation.
Yeah.
We're talking about adding value. This generation loves exposure on platforms, and they love money. If you're in a position where you can provide exposure or money to their lives, I think that's a great start to actually keeping them motivated and giving them incentive to maintain and sustain the relationship that you're having with these younger people. I feel like it's a lot more challenging when you try to establish a relationship with them and you're not adding value to their lives and not giving them incentive to stay around. Because there's so many layers that you have to cut through just to build trust, because a lot of these young people, they don't have trust for older people. For whatever experience they went through in their neighborhoods, and I understand it to a large degree because I went through that growing up. I didn't really have any males or great successful people pouring into my life as a kid. So I had a strong disconnect towards elders outside of my parents, of course, my mother specifically. But it took me years to even be receptive to even listen to or even want to establish a relationship with elders. But I like over the years to me, and I like to speak from my own personal experience as well. I've been involved in leadership for years, and I've been doing what society may deem as the right thing since I've been home. I've been home for 5 years. For those that don't know, I spent 5 years in prison, and I've been amongst some of the greatest elders in Philadelphia. And not many people have been willing to connect with me and establish a relationship with me. And I'm out here doing community work, trying to lift up the young people. So when you look at a person like myself that's actually trying to pour into the community, and you don't see elders trying to build relationships with me to add value to what I'm doing, it's kind of, how can I say? It's kind of hard for you to be able to, for me to see that we'll be able to do that for the young people that's out here not doing the right thing.
Reverend, close this out. So we almost, thanks for that, John. Close this out in terms of like, once again, that framework discussion, how to list where we go from here. I know I'm feeling like there's going to be part 2, part 3 is going to be subsequent parts of this discussion, and it's going to happen very soon. And maybe that's something that we need to talk about. We did that gun violence summit earlier on here on WURD on Reality Check, and then in the Facebook Live, maybe we need to do this as far as Black Men is concerned. But go ahead, Reverend, just some final parting thoughts.
I thank everybody that's been on the call, and of course I thank John for his honest sharing. Yes, we Black men cannot really come together until we bridge the differences that have happened and the hurts and the pain that have been the reality of our relationship till now. And so where do we go from here? Yes, those basic organic conversations have to begin with. And so we need to call on our leaders of our faiths and our leaders in our community to connect with those who are leaders in the young community, like John, to start to have conversations together and really to build the trust that has been missing for the last 20, 30 years. I know congregations or churches all over the city are trying to figure out how to speak more deeply to young people. but it starts with listening to young people to figure that out. And so we can be a bridge that can move us then to supporting their economic opportunity so that we can support their businesses to rebuild our community and to move us forward. I think that would be a great bridge to start.
Yeah, all right, Reverend, I'm going to give you the last word because we actually have to wrap up this State of Black Men Micro Summit session here on Reality Check. I've been Charles Ellison. I've been your host and anchor for the State of Black Men Micro Summit discussion. So we're going to have this again, new voices, fresh perspective, different ideas and concepts that we need to look at. Martin Pratt, thank you for hanging in there with us for the past 3 hours, past few hours.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, as our co-host, as our guest co-host of the State of Black Men Micro Summit. So I'm certainly going to have Martin Pratt of Philly Your Black News on once again. So in fact, we had a viewer of WURD TV, WURD listener, was saying we need to do these once a month. Just State of Black Men once a month. So we'll definitely do this. So we're going to have some conversations on the back end and see what we can do and how we can, but we got to be intentional about it. We can't be sloppy. Got to be intentional and structured about it and make sure we get all the issues out on the table. I know there's a lot of elements of it that we did not cover today. We tried our best, however. Also want to thank Troy Wilmore. Troy Wilmore booking the guests, pulling the guests together, getting it done on the board is still on the back end. And making sure people were coming in through Skype and by phone. Want to thank Troy Wilmore. Speaking of brothers getting it done, thank you. And Reverend Gregory Halston, Black Clergy of Philadelphia and Vicinity, Chair of the Criminal Justice Committee, has been joining us by phone. Also, John Solomon of Endangered Kind. Go to endangeredkind.com, a new creative, dynamic kind of on grassroots advocacy organization. He's been joining us by phone. John, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it, brother. And we will have you on at some point. Yeah, thank you. Keep doing that work, and we'll be in touch. And want to thank everyone else. State Representative Chris Rabb, Philadelphia City Council Member Isaiah Thomas. We also had on earlier with us Terren Walker, who stayed on with us for a little bit longer, gave us a little bit more of his time. Want to thank him. Want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening. And thank you for all these comments and these suggestions and the feedback and offering your insights on the state of black men. We were talking about black men specifically today here on Reality Check. We will do it once again. I like that idea about once a month. So you can't overdo this conversation. It's such an essential conversation, such an important, critical one for the health of our overall community. So I just appreciate everyone listening in, and I see the thoughts and some feedback and comments from people on Twitter as well. Thank you for that. We're going to now head into the source with Andrea Lawful Sanders. That's coming up next. So keep your radio dial, your live stream, and WURD TV dial locked in to the home of Black Talk Media, The Source, with Andrea Lawful Sanders coming up next. I'm Charles Ellison. That ends our Reality Check week. Hashtag Word on Politics. Continue to stay there. We'll be back at it, God willing, on Monday, 10 a.m. sharp. Looking forward to it. Everyone have a great weekend, but more importantly, want you to stay sharp, stay smart, and please do stay safe out there, everyone. And just chill a little bit, get some air, go for a walk. Don't stay glued to cable news, please, while they're going through this vote count soon. But definitely tune in to Reality Check next Monday at 10 a.m. Have a great weekend.